My name's Laura. I've been teaching Italian for a good part of my life, and at 42, I was pretty settled in my ways, comfortable, you might say, with the everyday hum of school bells and chalk dust. My life took a turn, though, not a dramatic one, but like when you catch someone's eye across a crowded room and just know something's going to happen. I met Marco on a typical soggy March afternoon. His daughter, Isabella, was one of my private students. A bright kid, always eager, always had her homework done on time. That day, she was scribbling away in her notebook when Marco first walked into my classroom to pick her up. "Sorry for barging in like this," he said, standing awkwardly at the door. His hair was a mess from the wind, and his coat was dripping all over the floor. "No worries at all. We're just wrapping up," I replied, giving him a reassuring smile. "Isabella's just finishing up an exercise." Marco nodded and leaned against the doorframe, watching us. "She talks a lot about you, says you make learning fun." I chuckled, closing my books. "I try. Italian is a beautiful language. It deserves a little passion, don't you think?" "Yeah, I guess," he shrugged, a small smile playing on his lips. "I'm Marco, by the way." "Laura," I said, extending my hand. Isabella packed her bag, chattering about the lesson and how she couldn't wait for the next one. Marco listened, his eyes flitting between her animated face and mine. It was clear he was a devoted dad. As they were about to leave, Marco paused. "Hey, if you're not busy this weekend, there's a little community gathering. Food, music, pretty laid back. Maybe you'd like to come? Bring some of that Italian passion to the party?" I was taken aback, not just by the invite but by the straightforwardness of it. "Sure, why not? Sounds like fun." "Great. It's a date then," he said, a bit too quickly. "I mean, not a date. Just, you know, a friendly outing." "Got it," I laughed, easing the awkwardness. "A friendly outing." At our first real outing, as the community band played some old tunes and kids ran around, Marco opened up a bit more over plates of food. "You know, I'm a widower," he said, his voice a bit lower, a bit rough around the edges. "Been raising Isabella and her brother Matteo on my own. He's 12, a real firecracker." I nodded, not sure what to say, my heart going out to him. "Sounds like you've got your hands full." "Yeah, it's been tough, but we manage," he replied, poking at his food. "They're good kids, they make it easier." Over the next few dates, our conversations deepened. We met at small cafes, walked through parks. It was during these walks that I met Matteo, a lively boy with his father's eyes and an infectious laugh. He took to me quickly, showing me his sketches and asking about Italy. Then, Marco introduced me to his mother. She was a stout woman with a sharp tongue but a warm smile. "So you're the lovely lady making my son smile again," she said, sizing me up, but not unkindly. "Glad he's found someone who can put up with his cooking." Becoming part of a new family wasn't something I planned meticulously, it sort of just happened, naturally unfolding as if it was meant to be. After Marco and I had been seeing each other for a while, things started to get serious. Before I knew it, I was not just his girlfriend, but a significant presence in his and his kids' lives. One Saturday morning, we decided it was time I moved in. Packing up my life into boxes felt strange, but right. Marco and the kids helped me move my stuff into their home, which was soon to become our home. "Hope you've got room for all these books," Marco joked as he lugged in yet another heavy box labeled books. "Better make room, or I'm building a library in the backyard," I shot back, laughing as we shuffled around the living room trying to figure out where everything would go. Matteo and Isabella seemed excited, each of them showing me their rooms and where I could maybe put some of my things. "You can put some stuff on my shelf if you want," Matteo offered, pointing to his cluttered bookshelf filled with model cars and old comic books. "Thanks, Matteo. Maybe I'll just add a couple of books, eh? Leave room for your cars," I replied, ruffling his hair. The real test came when I met Marco's mother, Rosa, under the new context of moving in. She came over that afternoon, her eyes scanning every move but her tone warm. "So, you're setting up shop here now, huh?" she asked as she watched me arrange the kitchen. "Yeah, Rosa, making it official," I answered, unsure how much territory I was allowed to mark as my own. "Well, just remember, Marco likes his eggs over easy, not scrambled," she pointed out bluntly, but with a twinkle in her eye. "I'll keep that in mind," I smiled, appreciating her mix of humor and directness. Living together meant adjusting, a lot of it. Marco worked long hours, and I found myself spending more time with Matteo and Isabella. I helped them with homework, we cooked meals together, and gradually, I wasn't just Laura anymore, I was a part of their daily routine. It wasn't all smooth sailing. There were days when I felt like I was stepping on toes, overstepping unseen boundaries. But for every awkward moment, there were a dozen others filled with laughter and shared secrets. We were finding our rhythm, slow and steady. Marco and I had our moments too, learning about each other in ways only possible when you share a space. "You know, you make this place better," Marco said one night as we sat on the couch, exhausted from the day. "I just want you guys to feel like it's still your home," I said, my head resting on his shoulder. Becoming a stepmom wasn't easy. There were no guidelines or rule books. But as I fell asleep that night, listening to the quiet hum of the house, I knew this was where I was meant to be. It was chaotic, messy, and absolutely perfect in its own imperfect way. In that moment, that was enough. Rosa and I used to have the best times together before the stroke changed everything. She'd come over and we'd spend hours in the kitchen, sharing recipes and gossiping like old friends. Those days filled the house with laughter and the warm aromas of Italian dishes we both loved to cook. But life, as it does, took a sharp turn. When Rosa was paralyzed, everything shifted. Marco moved her into our home, and naturally, I stepped up to take care of her. It seemed like the right thing to do, she was family, after all. However, Marco's help was strangely absent. I thought maybe he was just overwhelmed with work, but as days turned into weeks, his distance grew more noticeable. Caring for Rosa was a full-time job. She needed help with everything, and I did it all without a second thought, clinging to the warmth we once shared. But her condition seemed to harden her a bit, and our light chats turned into terse, functional conversations. "Did you add the basil to the sauce?" Rosa would ask sharply, watching me from her wheelchair as I cooked. "Yes, just like you taught me," I'd respond, trying to catch her eye and maybe spark a smile. But smiles were hard to come by those days. As time went on, Marco and I spoke less and less. One night, I tried to bridge the gap. "Marco, we hardly talk anymore. Is everything okay?" He was silent for a moment, then his words cut through the air. "I'm just tired, Laura. It's been a lot, dealing with everything." I nodded, feeling a chill. His eyes didn't meet mine. The disconnect between us was palpable, but I pushed it aside, focusing on Rosa and the kids. Years passed, and Rosa's presence in the house became the new normal until her death. It was sudden, despite everything, and the funeral was a blur of black dresses, somber faces, and whispered condolences. But the real shock came after the funeral, when Marco's true feelings spilled out during an argument. "You're just here taking up space now, Laura. I only put up with you because you were useful, but look at you, what use are you now?" His words were like slaps, leaving me stunned. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Marco, how can you say that? After all these years?" "It's the truth, Laura. You were here for the kids and my mother, that's it." He turned away, dismissing me with a wave of his hand. The kids, now practically adults, started showing their true colors too. Isabella, once sweet and friendly, became cold and cruel. "You really have no one, Laura. You're just here because we pity you," she'd say, her words dripping with disdain. Matteo wasn't any kinder. "Why are you still hanging around? You're just taking up space," he'd sneer whenever we crossed paths in the hallway. Their words, their rejection, it gnawed at me daily. I felt isolated in the very home I had poured my heart into. The family I loved and cared for had turned against me, seeing me as nothing more than a temporary fixture, now obsolete. One evening, I was setting the dinner table, hoping for a quiet meal, when Marco walked in, his face like a storm cloud. "Why are you still trying to play happy families, Laura? You know it's all a show," he snapped as he threw his keys on the table. I paused, my hands trembling slightly as I placed the last fork down. "I don't understand, Marco. Why are you so angry with me? You were part of the setup, like furniture. Useful for a time, and now just taking up space," he retorted, opening the fridge and staring into it as if it held the answers to more than just his hunger. I stood there, silent, trying to process his harsh words. The room felt like it was closing in on me. Isabella and Matteo came in, their faces mirroring their father's disdain. Matteo grabbed a soda from the fridge, his eyes mocking. "Yeah, Laura, maybe you should just accept it. You're like an old couch we should have thrown out ages ago." Isabella laughed, a harsh sound that filled the room. "Seriously, Laura. Even you have to see it's true. You're just the leftovers now." Their cruelty sliced through any defense I had left. I turned away, hiding the tears that threatened to fall. "I've cared for you all, loved you. How can you treat me like this?" Marco shrugged, dismissing my emotions with a wave of his hand. "Love? That's a strong word for just doing your job, don't you think?" The rest of the dinner passed in silence, at least on my part. Their words echoed in my head: leftovers, useless, old furniture. It was clear they saw me as nothing more than a temporary help that had overstayed her welcome. Life has a way of knocking you down when you least expect it. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, my health took a nosedive. My legs, which had always carried me through long days of teaching and bustling about the house, suddenly became a source of constant pain. The doctors couldn't give me a straight answer at first, tossing around terms like chronic inflammation and possible degenerative issues, which meant little more than "get used to it." This change hit me like a brick. Teaching at the private school, a job I cherished and excelled at, became impossible. I had to resign, leaving behind not just my income but a part of my identity. At home, every step was a struggle, every task a monumental effort. I felt trapped in my own body and, worse, in a home where I was increasingly unwelcome. Marco's reaction to my situation was like a cold splash of reality. One morning, after I had struggled to clear up the breakfast dishes, grimacing with every move, he walked into the kitchen. He watched me for a moment, his face twisted not with concern, but irritation. "Why are you even trying to clean? You're just making a mess," he said, his voice cold and sharp. "I'm trying to help out, Marco. It's not like I can just sit around," I replied, leaning against the counter for support. "Help? You call that help? You're more of a burden now than anything," he shot back, his words slicing through the air and cutting me deeper than the pain in my legs. Marco and the kids spent money like water, flaunting new gadgets and designer clothes bought with the inheritance. Me? I got nothing, not that I expected anything different at this point. Their lavish spending was a slap in the face, a constant reminder of where I stood in this family. On top of that, Marco and the kids loved to remind me that I was only in their house out of pity. "Don't push your luck, Laura," Marco would sneer. "Remember, you're just one argument away from being out on the street." Their words were like a cage, locking me in a life of quiet desperation. But one day, I stumbled upon a website for private tutors teaching languages online. My heart raced as I explored the possibility of teaching Italian again, reconnecting with a part of myself that I thought was lost forever. I dove into setting up my profile, my fingers trembling with excitement as I typed out my experience and qualifications. "Experienced Italian teacher, personalized and engaging lessons," I wrote. Before long, I was booking my first session. The thrill of teaching, of speaking Italian, of engaging with eager students, it all came rushing back, filling me with a warmth I hadn't felt in years. Each day, as Marco and the kids left, I transformed a corner of my room into a makeshift classroom. I started with a few students, but word of mouth spread fast. My schedule filled up, and I found myself teaching more and more. "You're really good at this, Laura," a student told me over a video call, their words bolstering my confidence. I started receiving glowing reviews, and my rates went up. As my reputation grew, so did my earnings. It was astounding. For the first time in a long time, I was making my own money, more money than Marco, even. But I kept this to myself. If Marco or his kids knew, they'd surely find a way to claim it or ruin this for me. One afternoon, after a particularly rewarding session, I sat back and let out a long, satisfied sigh. Just then, Marco walked in earlier than usual. He eyed my setup, a laptop, notebooks, Italian flags, and teaching aids scattered around. "What's all this?" he asked, his tone suspicious. "I'm teaching," I replied, my voice steady and calm, despite my racing heart. "Teaching? Here?" His confusion was evident. He hadn't expected this. "Who would want to learn from you?" "People from all over the world," I responded with a pride I couldn't hide. "Turns out, I'm quite popular." Marco scoffed, clearly unimpressed. "Make sure this doesn't interfere with your chores around the house." "It won't," I assured him, turning back to my computer. His presence in my sanctuary irked me, but he soon left, muttering under his breath. That night, I lay in bed, a smirk playing on my lips. Marco and his kids could spend all the inheritance they wanted on fleeting pleasures. Meanwhile, I was building something lasting, something just for me. My online teaching wasn't just a job, it was my lifeline, my escape plan. I was no longer just the downtrodden stepmother, I was Laura, the sought-after Italian tutor, a woman with a plan and a growing bank account. That night at dinner, there was a tension in the air so thick you could almost see it hanging above the table. Marco and the kids were unusually quiet as I served the food, their eyes avoiding mine. I could feel something brewing beneath the surface, but nothing prepared me for the words that were about to slice through the last threads of our family ties. Marco was the first to break the silence, his voice cold and detached. "I got a promotion at work," he announced, not looking at anyone in particular. "I bought a new house, too." I paused, spoon midair, the news catching me off guard. "That's great, congratulations," I managed to say, though a sinking feeling started to form in my stomach. "Yeah, well, don't get too excited," Marco continued, his eyes now fixed on me with a hardness I hadn't seen before. "You're not coming with us." I put the spoon down, feeling suddenly like I had been punched in the gut. "What do you mean?" "Just what I said," Marco snapped. "You're not part of the plan, Laura. You stay here. I'm moving with the kids. We need a fresh start." The room spun slightly as his words sunk in. Isabella giggled cruelly from across the table, her voice like a knife. "Yeah, who needs an old limping maid in a shiny new house?" Matteo chimed in with a smirk. "Consider yourself lucky we're not kicking you out on the street tonight." I looked from face to face, each one a mask of contempt and dismissal. My heart pounded painfully in my chest. "And the house? This house?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's sold," Marco said bluntly. "New owners will take over in a month. Maybe try to find a shelter or something by then." They all laughed, a harsh, grating sound that filled the room. I sat there, stunned, my hands trembling in my lap. This was their thanks, their repayment for all the years of care, of love, of sacrifice. As the laughter died down, I found my voice, small but steady. "I see. Well, then I guess there's nothing left to say, is there?" Marco shrugged, already disinterested as he turned his attention back to his plate. "Guess not." I stood up, my legs shaky but holding. I looked at each of them, their faces still turned towards their food, no sign of remorse or regret. "Enjoy your dinner," I said quietly, then turned and left the room. In my room, the gravity of the situation hit me full force. They were really going to leave me behind, discard me like an old piece of furniture. But as I sat there, a strange sense of relief began to wash over me. I was free, free from their cruelty, their disdain, their oppressive presence. It was not the freedom I had imagined or wanted, but it was freedom nonetheless. The day I left Marco and his children behind, I felt a strange mix of liberation and deep sadness. As I hauled my last suitcase to the door, Marco's bitter words followed me. "Hope you enjoy the Flophouses, because that's all you can afford," he jeered, with a cruel laugh that echoed off the empty walls. His kids, Isabella and Matteo, joined in with their own barbs. "Good riddance. Now we don't have to deal with your pathetic limping around the house." I didn't bother to reply. What was the point? I had learned long ago that words were useless against their kind of cruelty. I walked out, letting the door slam shut behind me, shutting off the chapter of my life that had brought me so much pain. Moving into the apartment I had rented in secret felt like the first true breath of fresh air in years. It was a modest place, but it was mine alone. Here, no shadows of disdain would loom over me. No harsh words would cut through the quiet. Setting up my new home was therapeutic. I arranged my books, set up my small desk by the window, the new headquarters for my online Italian lessons. I relished the peace, the utter silence that came not from tension but from tranquility. The divorce was finalized soon after. I stood in the courtroom, facing Marco and his children for the last time. They smirked, confident and unrepentant. When offered alimony, I refused. "I want nothing from him, not now, not ever," I declared. "He and his children are strangers to me." Word of my teaching spread, and my schedule became packed with students from all corners of the globe. The income was more than sufficient, a sweet victory that was all my own. One evening, while sipping tea at my new kitchen table, a call from an old friend brought unexpected news. "Have you heard about Marco?" she asked, a tone of disbelief in her voice. "He's moved into a fancy new house, but guess what? He's already blowing through money like there's no tomorrow." I couldn't help but grin, shaking my head. "No surprise there," I replied. "He never did plan for the future." Rumors about Marco and his children's reckless spending didn't surprise me, but it was the catalyst I needed to put my plan into action. During the last few tumultuous months of our marriage, I had recorded several of their verbal tirades and cruel jabs, originally for my own records, in case I ever needed proof of their behavior. I sent the files anonymously to Marco's boss. The company he worked for had a strict policy against any form of harassment, and I knew they would take it seriously. It wasn't long before the repercussions came to light. One evening, my phone rang with Marco's number. I hesitated, but curiosity got the better of me, and I answered. The desperation in his voice was palpable. "Laura, what have you done?" he blurted out, his voice a mix of anger and fear. "You've heard, then? Sounds like your company didn't appreciate the way you treat people," I said calmly, a hint of vindication coloring my words. "You've ruined me. They demoted me, slashed my salary. How am I supposed to pay the mortgage now? We could lose the house," he raged, his words tinged with panic. In the background, I could hear Isabella and Matteo, their voices loud and accusatory, blaming me, the same way they always had. "This is all your fault, Laura. You're going to pay for this." Matteo's voice cut through the phone. I couldn't help but laugh, a deep, genuine laugh that had been absent for far too long. "Now you might end up in a flophouse, isn't it ironic?" I said, the irony not lost on me. "Please, Laura, help us. We're sorry. We didn't mean any of it. We'll do anything," Marco pleaded, desperation making his voice crack. "You don't get it, Marco. I don't want your apologies or to help you. I'm done being your maid, your punching bag," I retorted sharply. "But we're family," he tried again, a last-ditch effort. "We were family," I corrected him coldly, feeling a surge of empowerment. "Goodbye, Marco." I hung up the phone, blocking his number along with Isabella's and Matteo's. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, a closure I hadn't realized I needed. News reached me a few weeks later through mutual acquaintances that Marco and his children were indeed evicted after failing to make their mortgage payments. They had to downsize significantly, and the kids, now adults, had to find jobs to support themselves. The thought of them scrambling to make ends meet while I was contemplating buying my own house brought a smirk to my face. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice, about showing them that I was no longer the person they thought they could trample over. I turned my attention back to my computer, to a message from a student thanking me for my inspiring lessons. It warmed my heart. I had found my place, my purpose, and no one could take that away from me. My name's Ava, and if you had told me a couple of years ago that I'd be where I am now, I'd have laughed you out of the room. Back then, I was all about chasing stories, living off caffeine, and making my mark in the world of journalism. PR was just a blip on my radar, something I thought I'd never touch. Life's funny that way, huh? This story really kicks off on what I thought was just another Tuesday. I was in this cozy little cafe downtown, glued to my phone, deep in conversation about some PR campaign that was giving me a headache. The kind of talk where if you're not in the biz, it sounds like I'm speaking another language. Yeah, I get it. But if we pivot the narrative towards a more grassroots approach, we can totally bypass the traditional media gatekeepers. I remember saying, probably a bit louder than necessary. I've always had a voice that carries. And there's this guy, sitting all by himself at the next table. Couldn't have been more than 30, dressed casual, but neat. He's got this look on his face, like he's trying to solve a puzzle, but missing half the pieces. I wrap up the call, let out a long sigh, and that's when I notice him staring. Not in a creepy way, more bewildered than anything. What? Never heard a woman talk shop before? I shot at him, half annoyed, half amused. He just blinks, then breaks into this easy, disarming grin. Actually, I was trying to figure out what language you were speaking. Sounded like English, but I couldn't make head or tail of it. I couldn't help but laugh. It's called PR speak. It's English, but for masochists who like their jobs a little too much. He chuckles, slides his chair a bit closer. Ethan, he introduces himself, offering a hand. Ava, I reply, shaking his hand. His grip's firm, honest. So, Ava, you always talk about work like it's some kind of secret society, he teases, taking a sip of his coffee. Only when it scares the normals away. I quip back. We both laugh, and just like that, the ice isn't just broken, it's shattered. Ethan's got a way of making you feel like you're the only two people in the room. He listens like the words you're saying are the most important thing in the world. We talked about everything and nothing, work, music, the latest series binge. It was easy, comfortable. Before I knew it, hours had passed. He's telling me about his job as a plumbing wholesale manager, which, honestly, I didn't even know was a thing. But he talks about it with this passion, this genuine love for something so mundane. It was refreshing. You actually enjoy talking about pipes and fittings? I ask, raising an eyebrow. As much as you enjoy pivoting narratives, he shoots back, and we're in stitches again. By the time we part ways, it's late. The cafe staff are politely, but pointedly, stacking chairs on tables around us. Ethan scribbles his number on a napkin, slides it across the table. Call me, maybe, he says, a playful challenge in his eyes. Maybe, I mimic, tucking the napkin into my purse. Walking home, I couldn't shake the grin off my face. Little did I know, that random Tuesday in a random cafe would lead me here. Ethan and I, we clicked. It wasn't just attraction, it was like finding a piece of yourself you didn't know was missing. Fast forward a bit, and Ethan and I are knee-deep in what can only be described as the chaos of wedding planning. If you've never planned a wedding, let me tell you, it's like trying to juggle cats. And not just any cats, but cats that are on fire and extremely opinionated about floral arrangements and seating charts. I don't get it, Ethan said one evening, scratching his head as we looked over our ever-growing guest list. I thought you'd be all about having a big blowout wedding. You know, the kind where you need to hire a second city just to fit all the guests. I laughed, tossing another crumpled-up version of the guest list into the bin. Nah, that's not me. I've always dreamed of something small, you know? Just us, our families, and a handful of friends. I don't need a circus. Just something real, something us. Ethan looked at me, a mix of surprise and admiration in his eyes. You're full of surprises, Ava. Alright, let's do it your way. But we're not skimping on the cake, deal? Deal, I agreed, and just like that, our modest wedding plans were in motion. The day itself was a blur of laughter, happy tears, and way too much cake. Ethan was right about not skimping on that. Our families and a few close friends gathered in this quaint little venue we'd found. It was nothing fancy, but it was perfect for us. Ethan's mom, Sylvia, was there, of course. She was hard to read, always had been. But today, she seemed, well, if not exactly thrilled, at least not openly hostile to the whole affair. You sure you don't want a bigger do, dear? Sylvia asked me, as we were getting ready. Her tone was somewhere between concerned and condescending, a skill I reckon she'd perfected over the years. Ethan and I are sure, Sylvia. We wanted it to be intimate, just the people who matter most to us, I replied, keeping my voice steady and friendly. Was all she said, but she left it at that. I considered it a win. The ceremony was short and sweet. Ethan looked so handsome I thought my heart might burst right out of my chest. And when he said his vows, promising to love and cherish me through all the craziness life might throw our way, I believed him. Not because they were fancy words, but because they were true, spoken from the heart. After the ceremony, during the reception, Ethan's uncle, a burly man who'd had a bit too much to drink, clapped a heavy hand on Ethan's shoulder and slurred, "You two, you're good together." Not like some of these fancy folks with their big weddings, and even bigger divorces. Ethan grinned. "Thanks, Uncle Joe. We think so too." And then there was dancing. I'm not much of a dancer, more of a flailer, really, but with Ethan, it didn't matter. We were clumsy and completely out of sync, but it was perfect because it was us. As the night wound down, Ethan pulled me close, his voice soft in my ear. "Best day of my life, Ava. I can't believe you're my wife." I rested my head on his shoulder, feeling the weight of the day start to lift. "Best day of mine too, Ethan. Here's to us and to doing things our way." After the wedding buzz settled down, Ethan and I got hit by a serious case of nest building. We were on the hunt for our perfect starter home, something cozy but with enough room to grow into. The weekends were spent scrolling through listings and hitting open houses. It was exciting but, damn, was it exhausting. One lazy Sunday afternoon, as we were knee-deep in house listings and mortgage calculators, Sylvia dropped by. She had this knack for popping up unannounced, like a sitcom neighbor without the laugh track. "Whatcha doing?" she asked, peering over our shoulders at the laptop screen, her tone casual, but eyes sharp. "House hunting," Ethan replied, not looking up. "We're thinking of buying." Sylvia perked up at that, her interest suddenly piqued. "Oh, buying, are we? Moving up in the world?" I shot Ethan a look, trying to gauge his reaction. He just shrugged, the universal husband signal for, "Let's not make a scene." We showed her some of the places we were considering. She had an opinion on everything, the location, the layout, even the color of the freaking curtains in the photos. Then, out of the blue, she dropped the bomb. "Since you two are doing so well, maybe you could help me out with something. My living room could use a facelift, a new couch, maybe a TV stand." Ethan and I exchanged looks. This was new territory. What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep the skepticism out of my voice. Sylvia waved a hand, as if she was asking for something as simple as borrowing a cup of sugar. "Oh, you know, just a little financial help. It's not like you can't afford it." Ethan coughed, a clear sign he was uncomfortable. "Mom, that's not really..." But Sylvia cut him off. "Ethan, darling, I've given you everything. The least you could do is help your old mother out." The room got tense. I could see Ethan wrestling with himself, the guilt Sylvia was laying on thick. "Okay, Mom. We'll see what we can do," he finally said, deflating like a balloon. I was floored. Just like that? We were going to dip into our house fund for Sylvia's living room makeover? After Sylvia left, with a smug little smile and a list of furniture stores, Ethan and I had it out. Ethan, what the hell? Why'd you just roll over like that? I was pacing, my hand slicing the air, for emphasis. He was on the couch, head in hands. Ava, it's my mom. What was I supposed to do? Say no? Yes. That's exactly what you were supposed to say. I shot back. We've been saving for months, and now we're supposed to just hand it over for her living room? Ethan stood up, his frustration matching mine. I know. It's just, she's my mom. It's complicated. Complicated doesn't even start to cover it, Ethan. We're talking about our future here. Not just some new furniture for your mom. The argument went back and forth, a tennis match of frustration and guilt. It was like a merry-go-round of frustration. We finally agreed that Ethan went too far by giving Sylvia access to our shared account, a decision we both regretted pretty quickly. But agreeing doesn't fix the feeling that our plans just took a major hit. That night, as we lay in bed, the air still thick between us, Ethan whispered, I'm sorry, Ava. We'll figure this out. Together. Yeah. I whispered back, not convinced, but wanting to believe. Together. After the whole living room saga, you'd think we'd get a breather. But nope, life had more in store for us, especially with Sylvia. This time, the battlefield was social media. Yeah, that's right. Facebook, Instagram, you name it. Sylvia suddenly became tech-savvy and found a new way to stir the pot. One evening, I'm scrolling through my feed, and I see a notification pop up. Sylvia commented on one of my posts. A picture from a work event, me in front of this big crowd, mic in hand, doing my PR thing. Her comment? Must be nice to travel and eat out all the time while some of us can barely afford a coffee. I stared at the screen, my blood boiling. Ethan! I yelled, not caring that it was past 11 p.m. and he was probably dozing off. He came running, phone in hand, a look of what now, plastered on his face. Look at this. I shoved my phone in his face, pointing at Sylvia's comment. He squinted, read, and then let out a long sigh. Mom's at it again, huh? At it again? She's practically painting me as some sort of millionaire while she plays the poor, neglected mother. It's embarrassing, Ethan. I was pacing now, every word punctuated with a stab of my finger in the air, as if I could physically grab my frustration and fling it out the window. Ethan grabbed my shoulders, forcing me to look at him. Ava, let's just talk to her, okay? Maybe she doesn't realize. Doesn't realize? I snorted, pulling away. She knows exactly what she's doing. This is about that damn living room and Hawaii. I'll call her in the morning, Ethan promised, but we both knew it was a band-aid on a bullet wound. The next day, true to his word, Ethan called Sylvia. I only caught his side of the conversation, but it was enough to paint a pretty clear picture. Mom, you can't post stuff like that. Yes, I get you're joking, but... No, Mom, it looks bad. Ava's upset. Well, maybe think before you post? It went on like that for a good 20 minutes. Ethan, ever the peacemaker, trying to reason with an immovable object. When he finally hung up, he looked like he'd gone 10 rounds with a heavyweight. She'll think about it, he said, but we both knew think about it meant find a new angle to cause drama. And she did. Her next move? Comments turned into direct messages, asking for this and that, hinting about how nice Hawaii looked this time of year. It was like dealing with a social media mob boss. Finally, I had enough. Ethan, this has to stop. It's either your mom or me at this point. We were in the kitchen, a half-eaten pizza between us, the epitome of domestic bliss if it weren't for the looming mother-in-law-shaped cloud over our heads. Ethan, ever the diplomat, sighed. Okay, I'll sort it. For real this time. But here's the kicker, Despite our grand plans of cutting off Sylvia's financial lifeline and blocking her online, we caved. Yeah, you heard me. We paid for Sylvia's damn trip to Hawaii. Why? Maybe it was guilt, maybe it was exhaustion, or maybe we just wanted a moment's peace. Whatever it was, it worked. Sylvia was over the moon, spending weeks packing and shopping for her tropical getaway as if she was fleeing the country. New clothes, new luggage, you name it. Ethan and I? We just went back to our lives, me to my work, him to his, both of us trying not to think about the dent in our savings. After Sylvia's trip from Hawaii, it felt like she had developed a taste for luxury, or at least, our money. It was like a switch had flipped. The ask started small, then got bigger and bolder. Ethan and I were her personal ATM, and she wasn't shy about making withdrawals. "Ethan, your mom's at it again," I grumbled one evening after dinner, waving my phone at him with the latest message from Sylvia, a thinly veiled request for a small loan for some new luxury she'd taken a fancy to. Ethan, bless him, looked like a man on the edge. "I know, Ava. I'll handle it," he sighed, scrubbing a hand down his face. "Handle it? How, Ethan?" "By saying, please stop, Mom? Because that's working out great so far," I snapped, frustration getting the better of me. He didn't respond right away, just stared at the table, jaw working. Finally, he looked up. "I'll talk to her. Seriously, this time. No more Mr. Nice Guy." And he did talk to her, or at least he tried. But Sylvia? She turned on the waterworks, painting herself as the victim, saying we didn't appreciate all she'd done for us. "I'll show you," she'd hissed through tears when Ethan stood his ground. At the time, we didn't know what she meant. We should have paid more attention. Fed up, I blocked her on every social platform I could. Out of sight, out of mind, I thought foolishly. If only it were that simple. The day she showed up at our house, flaunting those car keys, was like a scene from some twisted game show. "Look what I got." Sylvia beamed, as if she'd won an award rather than raided our savings. Ethan and I exchanged a look of horror. "Mom, how? Where did you get the money for this?" Ethan's voice was a mix of disbelief and dawning realization. Sylvia didn't even have the decency to pretend. "Oh, Ethan gave me access to your savings. Needed a new ride," she said, as casual as if she was talking about borrowing a cup of sugar. "Our house fund? You used our house fund?" My voice was barely a whisper, shock freezing the anger into a solid lump in my chest. Ethan's face went from pale to ash. We both knew what this meant, but seeing the numbers confirmed on our online banking was a gut punch. $260,000 gone. Just like that. Our dreams, our future, reduced to a pittance of $15,000. The fallout was nuclear. Ethan was in shock, repeating, "I didn't think she'd actually do it." Like a mantra. Me? I went from furious to outright livid. "She played us, Ethan. Played us like a cheap fiddle." "We have to do something," Ethan said, the fight finally sparking in him. This is theft." "Yeah, and it's war," I added, my mind racing through our options. Legal action, cutting ties, confronting Sylvia, it was all on the table now. Ethan nodded, determination replacing the shock. "We'll get it back, Ava. Every penny." When the truth came out that Sylvia had plundered our savings, Ethan was beyond furious, he was incandescent with rage. "Mom, how could you? You've just steamrolled over every line of decency. Your gall it's indescribable." His words were like bullets, aimed straight at her heartlessness. "But Sylvia?" She just cackled, that awful sound that made my skin crawl. "Oh, Ethan, please. Ava's raking it in. You'll fill that house fund up again in no time," she said, dismissing our financial ruin like it was a minor inconvenience. That was the final straw for Ethan. "Out, now. And I'm suing you," he declared, his voice cold enough to freeze hell over. Her laughter at that moment was bitter, filled with scorn. "You wouldn't dare. I'm your mother," she retorted, as if that bond gave her immunity. But Ethan was done playing her games. The second she was out the door, he was on the phone, securing our accounts and pulling together all the paperwork for a lawsuit. Sylvia might have thought it was all a bluff, but the fire in Ethan's eyes said otherwise. When the reality of the lawsuit hit her, Sylvia's reaction was volcanic. She bombarded Ethan's phone with calls, hurling accusations and insults, trying to guilt-trip him into backing down. But Ethan stood firm, cutting off all communication with her. The courtroom drama that unfolded was like something out of a bad TV show. It dragged our family drama into the glaring light of public scrutiny. But Ethan, he held his ground, presenting evidence with unflinching resolve. And when the judge finally made their ruling, it was like a weight was lifted off our shoulders. Sylvia was ordered to repay every single penny she had taken, starting with the flashy car she had bought to flaunt her theft. The fallout for Sylvia was swift and severe. She had to sell off everything, every luxury item she'd bought with our money, to pay us back. It was more than just a financial reckoning, it was a stark lesson in respect and boundaries. She had crossed a line, and now she was paying the price. For Ethan and me, it was a slow process of picking up the pieces. Watching our account slowly recover was a bittersweet victory. It was a harsh reminder of the ordeal we'd been through, but it also brought a sense of closure. It felt like, finally, we might be able to move forward, to rebuild our dreams on our terms, without the shadow of Sylvia's greed looming over us. After the whole legal mess with Sylvia, Ethan and I finally got to buy our dream house. It was small but beautiful, exactly what we'd been hoping for. I remember walking through each room over and over, still half in disbelief. After everything, our dream was real. We had our home. We decided to throw a housewarming party, even though the place was pretty much a big, empty box. No furniture, nothing. But that didn't stop us. Our friends came over, and we just embraced the emptiness. Sat on the floor, spread out some snacks and drinks, and had ourselves an Oriental-style housewarming. It was different, kind of funny, but amazing. Laughing and sharing stories on the bare floor, it hit me how much we'd gone through to get here. This empty house wasn't just a space, it was a testament to our resilience, our fight for a future we wanted. Sure, it was unconventional, but it was ours. And in that moment, with our friends around us, it felt like the fullest, richest place in the world. "Hey, this might not be the fanciest housewarming," I said, looking around at our friends. "But it's definitely the most memorable." Ethan caught my eye and grinned. "Who needs furniture when you've got good company, right?" Through the grapevine, those chats over fences or quick exchanges in the grocery store, we heard about Sylvia's latest chapter. It turned out, the consequences of her actions ran deeper than just our drama. Banks and credit companies, tired of waiting, had come knocking. She was drowning in debt, the kind that swallows you whole. Eventually, she was forced to sell her house, the one she filled with all those ill-gotten gains, and move into a modest apartment on the city's outskirts. "Ethan, you hear about your mom?" I asked one evening, the news still fresh on my mind. He sighed, a deep, weary sound. "Yeah, I did. Can't say I'm surprised, but..." His voice trailed off, lost in the complex web of emotions that comes with family. Part of me hoped this would be a wake-up call for Sylvia, a harsh lesson in responsibility and consequence. Maybe now she'll learn, right? About managing money, thinking ahead? Ethan just shook his head, looking out the window. "I hope so. I really do. But people don't change overnight." In our little home, life bloomed in unexpected ways. Our biggest news wasn't about Sylvia or the past, it was about the future. I was pregnant. The realization hit us with a mix of joy, awe, and a tiny bit of fear. We were going to be parents. "I'm reading everything I can get my hands on," I told Ethan, my nightstand a testament to my newfound obsession with parenting books. "But you know what? The most important thing I want to teach our kid isn't in these books." He looked curious. "Oh yeah? What's that?" "Thrift. And not just saving money, but understanding its value, respecting it." I was determined. Our child would learn from our past, from Sylvia's mistakes and our own. Ethan wrapped an arm around me, his smile warm. I think that's perfect. We'll teach them about hard work, saving, and spending wisely. They'll grow up knowing how to manage their money, unlike. He didn't need to finish. We both knew who he meant. Our little house, once a dream delayed by betrayal and greed, was now a home filled with love and soon, the laughter of our child. It was a fresh start, a promise that we'd do better, be better. And as for Sylvia, we both hoped that this might be the beginning of her own new chapter, one where she found her way out of the financial chaos she'd created. Life in our new home was good. It was real. And every day, it reminded us of where we'd been and where we were determined to go, not just for us, but for our growing family.
Life in my small hometown was as straightforward as it gets. My parents, John and Mary, were the rock-solid types, not much for fancy words or big dreams, but when it came to love and education for me and my brother Mike, they were all in. I guess you could say I had a pretty normal life, working as an insurance agent. It wasn't exactly thrilling, but it paid the bills. Then, along came Alex. He was different from the guys around town. He had this way of seeing the world that just pulled you in. We hit it off immediately, and before I knew it, we were planning a wedding. My job didn't seem all that important anymore, especially when we found out I was pregnant. I decided to quit and focus on our family. Alex was over the moon about it, always saying how he wanted our kids to have one parent around full-time. We ended up moving closer to Alex's parents, just a 5-minute walk away. He thought it'd be great, you know, having family so close to help out with the baby and stuff. I wasn't exactly thrilled, but I agreed. That decision would come back to bite me in ways I couldn't have imagined, all thanks to Mrs. Anderson, my mother-in-law from hell. Mrs. Anderson had this idea of a perfect daughter-in-law, and let me tell you, I wasn't it. The woman had a comment for everything I did, from the way I washed the dishes to how I decided to stay home and raise our kid. One day, I was in the kitchen, trying to make sense of her latest critique on my lasagna, when Alex walked in. He found me muttering to myself about how to properly layer noodles according to the Gospel of Mrs. Anderson. "What's got you talking to the pasta, Em?" he asked, trying to hide his amusement. "Your mom," I huffed, not looking up from the dish. "Apparently, I can't even make lasagna right. It's too, what did she call it? Unorthodox." Alex sighed, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "Don't let her get to you. You know how she is."
"Yeah."
"A nightmare dressed like a daytime TV show host," I grumbled, but I couldn't help but lean back into his embrace. "It'll get better, you'll see. She just needs to get used to how things are now," he said, always the optimist. "Get used to it? Alex, she treats me like I'm the latest in a long line of disappointments she's had to endure. Next, she'll be telling me how to breathe correctly," I said, exasperated. "We could always try breathing exercises if it'll make her lay off," Alex joked, trying to lighten the mood. "I need more than breathing exercises to deal with your mother. I need a miracle," I shot back, finally cracking a smile. Despite the constant friction with Mrs. Anderson, life with Alex was everything I had hoped for and more. He was my rock, always there to make me laugh when I felt like pulling my hair out. For now, I was content in our little bubble, blissfully unaware of the storms brewing on the horizon. It wasn't long before her helpful visits became my daily dread. She'd come over, especially when Alex was at work, as if she had a radar for my alone time. The minute she stepped through the door, it was like she was on a mission to find fault. One afternoon, she caught me in the middle of tidying up the living room. "Emma, darling," she began, her voice dripping with a tone that was anything but darling. "This place is a mess. Do you even know how to clean properly?" I bit my tongue, counting to 10 in my head. "I'm doing the best I can, Mrs. Anderson," I replied, trying to keep the peace. "And these dishes," she continued, not missing a beat as she moved to the kitchen. "Look at these spots. When I was your age, I worked a full-time job and still kept the house spotless." There it was, the age-old lecture on how I was doing everything wrong. I clenched my jaw, feeling my frustration rise. Times have changed, Mrs. Anderson. I do work, taking care of your grandson and this home. That's no excuse for living off my son and wasting his money. She snapped back, her words like venom. I had heard enough. Look, I appreciate your concern, but I'm not idling. Alex and I agreed on this arrangement. It's our decision, not just mine. Her eyes narrowed. A real woman knows how to balance work and home. You're just taking the easy way out. The argument was going nowhere, and I knew it. If you're done inspecting, I have a lot to do, I said, my voice cold. She huffed, clearly displeased, but finally started heading towards the door. Just remember, Emma, my son deserves better. The door closed behind her, and I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Alone again, I slumped against the counter, feeling both defeated and furious. How could one person make me feel so small? Alex came home to find me still stewing over his mother's words. What's wrong, babe? He asked, immediately noticing my mood. Your mother, I started, and that was enough to set me off on a rant about her visit. She thinks I'm lazy, that I'm wasting your money, that I don't know how to clean, or cook, or do anything right. Alex listened, his expression a mix of frustration and sympathy. When I finished, he wrapped me in a hug. You know I don't agree with any of that, right? We decided together for you to stay home with Max. You're doing an amazing job. Mom, she's from a different time. I'll talk to her, okay? I nodded, leaning into his embrace. I just wish she could see that I'm trying my best. We'll get through this, Alex assured me. Together, all right? Don't let her get to you. Easier said than done, I thought. But with Alex by my side, I felt a little bit stronger. Mrs. Anderson might be a storm cloud in my sunny sky, but I was starting to learn how to weather the storm. The battle lines at our dinner table were drawn over broccoli and butter-laden casseroles. I was all for quinoa salads and grilled veggies, trying to keep things light and healthy. Alex, bless his heart, dug into whatever I whipped up with a smile. Our little guy, Jake, was shaping up to be a mini food critic with a taste for anything green. But Mrs. Anderson, the queen of cream and butter, wasn't having any of it. She reckoned my health kick was some trendy nonsense that would cost more than we could chew. Come Jake's 6th birthday, the in-laws swung by to drop off their love and, in Mrs. Anderson's case, a trunkload of her signature dishes. She marched into our kitchen like it was her own and unloaded an arsenal of what could only be described as heart attack on a platter. I didn't mind. To each their own, right? But as we all sat down to celebrate, it was clear my cooking was the main attraction. Alex and Jake piled their plates with my dishes, and even Mr. Anderson, a man of few words and fewer dietary restrictions, bypassed his wife's offerings for mine. Mrs. Anderson, not one to be upstaged, started pushing her dishes across the table. Try some of this, it's got real flavor, she insisted, her voice laced with a challenge. Alex, ever the diplomat, tried to let her down easy. Mom, your food's great, but it doesn't agree with me lately. Emma's been cooking lighter, and it's been easier on my stomach. Even Mr. Anderson chimed in. I get enough of these heavy meals at home. It's nice to have something different. You could see the storm brewing in Mrs. Anderson's eyes. She was about as pleased as a cat in a bath. Without another word, she stood up, her cheeks a shade of tomato, and made some excuse about forgetting something in the oven at home. She was out the door before dessert, leaving a cloud of tension in her wake. After the door clicked shut, Alex let out a low whistle. Well, that went smoothly, he said, sarcasm thick in his voice. We all shared a laugh, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. Mrs. Anderson had a way of holding grudges like they were prized possessions. As the evening wound down, and we said
Goodbye
to the last of the guests, I caught Alex watching me with a look that was half admiration, half concern. You okay? He asked, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. I leaned into him, the chaos of the day melting away.
Yeah,
I'm good. Your mom might be a hurricane, but I've got my storm shelter right here. He chuckled, kissing the top of my head. That's my girl. Just remember, we're in this together. Team us against the world.
yeah,
Team us, I echoed, feeling a surge of confidence. Mrs. Anderson might think she could rain on our parade, but together, Alex and I were a force to be reckoned with. And if that meant weathering a few storms along the way, so be it. After all, what's a little rain to a couple of umbrella holders like us? After the storm that was my son's 6th birthday, things settled down. Mrs. Anderson, my not-so-beloved mother-in-law, gave us a wide berth, which was a relief. Life was peaceful until Christmas rolled around. Out of the blue, Mrs. Anderson called, asking me to whip up some dishes for the family gathering. It took me by surprise, but hey, I thought it might be a chance to mend fences. I put my heart into those dishes, making sure each one was a hit. The day before the gathering, I dropped them off at her place, feeling hopeful. My little boy, eager to spend time with his grandma, went over early on the day. When Alex and I arrived, the house was buzzing with relatives. Everyone seemed genuinely happy to see us, everyone except her. The atmosphere was weird, but I brushed it off, thinking maybe we were finally turning a corner. That hope shattered the moment Mrs. Anderson stood up, clearing her throat for everyone's attention. I need to apologize, she began, her voice louder than necessary. I made a mistake letting Emma prepare our dinner. I felt every eye in the room on me, confusion and embarrassment flushing my cheeks. What was she on about? She made a show of tasting my dish, then dramatically spat it out. See? Inedible, she announced, urging others to try and see for themselves. My heart sank as I watched relatives hesitantly taste my food, their expressions turning sour. It didn't make any sense. I'd tasted those dishes, they were fine. What's going on? I whispered to Alex, who looked as baffled as I felt. He shrugged, at a loss. I don't know, Em. This isn't right. Mrs. Anderson was basking in the drama, a smug look on her face as she watched the scene unfold. I'm so sorry you all had to taste that. I have no idea what Emma was thinking. Encouraged by her performance, other relatives hesitantly followed suit, tasting the food and then sharing looks of disappointment. Murmurs of agreement spread around the table like wildfire, with people politely pushing their plates away. The mood shifted, with everyone suddenly becoming a critic, suggesting that what I'd brought to the table was less a feast and more a fiasco. Just as the embarrassment was about to swallow me whole, my husband's cousin, Mike, tried to lighten the mood. Hey, don't sweat it, he said, clapping me on the back with a half-hearted chuckle. We all botch it up in the kitchen now and then. No biggie. But his words, meant to comfort, barely registered. My gaze was locked on my mother-in-law, who was practically glowing with vindication. Her smile was tight, satisfied, as if she had orchestrated the entire evening just to see me falter. Feeling like I was in some sort of nightmare, I approached the table and grabbed a fork. I had to know. Each dish I had lovingly prepared and tasted to perfection before bringing it to the gathering was now tainted with a pungent taste of balsamic vinegar. It was baffling, these recipes were my signature, crafted without even a hint of vinegar. Standing there, amid the bewildered and disappointed glances from relatives, I felt a mix of embarrassment and betrayal. Mrs. Anderson, I started, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Could you please explain? There's vinegar in everything. It's overpowering, and it wasn't part of my recipes. Mrs. Anderson, with a coolness that seemed rehearsed, shrugged off my concern. How should I know, dear? Perhaps you simply made a mistake. It happens to the best of us. But before I could press further, a voice, clear and innocent, cut through the tension. Mommy! I know what happened to the food. It was my son, Danny, barely 6 years old, charging into the room with a bright bottle of balsamic vinegar clutched in his little hands. The room went silent, all eyes on him. "Danny, sweetheart, what are you talking about?" I asked, kneeling to his level. "I saw Grandma," he exclaimed, nearly out of breath from his excitement. "She put this in all your food when you were outside." A collective gasp filled the room. Mrs. Anderson's face turned a shade paler, her composure slipping. "That's absurd," she sputtered. "Why would I do such a thing?" "Danny, can you show me exactly what you saw Grandma do?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm despite the storm of emotions raging inside me. With the seriousness of a judge, Danny walked over to the table, pointing the bottle at each dish I had made. "Here, and here, and here," he announced, his finger moving from one dish to the next. After the whole fiasco with the dishes and Danny's bold claim, the room was as tense as a coiled spring. I couldn't have been prouder of my little guy for speaking up, his honesty shining like a beacon in that stormy evening. "That's my boy," I said, ruffling his hair gently. Kids his age have a knack for seeing things clearer than us adults sometimes. But Mrs. Anderson, my mother-in-law, wasn't having any of it. Her face twisted in anger, she snapped. "That child's lying. You've taught him to be a liar, just like you." The words hit like a slap, and Danny's tears started flowing, his little body shaking with sobs. That was the last straw for Alex. Standing up so fast his chair nearly toppled, he pointed a firm finger at his mother. "Don't you dare accuse him or Emma of lying. He's a child, Mom. What's wrong with you?" She shot back, "Oh, please. You're so whipped by Emma, you can't even see the truth. Maybe you should think about who you're married to." Before Alex could retort, his dad, a usually quiet man who preferred to stay out of these squabbles, stood up. His voice was calm but carried a weight that silenced the room. "Enough, Martha. I won't hear another word against my grandson or Emma. They're family." Martha, fuming, rounded on her husband. "Fine. If you're siding with them, maybe we shouldn't be together. How about that?" To everyone's shock, he simply nodded. "Maybe you're right. If this is how you treat family, I don't want any part of it. I want a divorce." The room went silent, the air thick with disbelief. Martha's face fell, her anger turning to panic. "You can't be serious, John." But John, with a resolve I'd never seen in him, just repeated himself. "I am. I can't be married to someone who treats their own family like this." Just when we thought the night couldn't get any more dramatic, Mrs. Anderson's sister, Aunt Linda, attempted to play peacemaker. "Martha, please, let's not make things worse. There's no need to fight with John over this," she implored, her voice a soothing balm on the heated exchange. But Mrs. Anderson wasn't having any of it. "I don't need your advice, Linda. I'll handle my family my way," she dismissed, her words sharp as knives. Aunt Linda, taken aback by the rebuff, stood up, her face a mask of offense and disappointment. "Well, if that's how you treat not just Emma, but all of us, I can't stay here," she declared, her voice tinged with sadness and disapproval. Her words were like a signal, and one by one, the other guests began to gather their things, their movements heavy with the weight of the evening's events. The atmosphere was charged with a mix of solidarity for what was right and disbelief at how quickly things had unraveled. The aftermath of the disastrous dinner at Mrs. Anderson's was like the calm after a storm. The guests had fled, leaving a palpable tension hanging in the air. Mr. Anderson, usually a man of few words and even fewer confrontations, turned to his wife with a look that was equal parts disappointment and determination. "Martha, this is the last straw," he said, his voice steady but laced with an undeniable weariness. "Your selfishness, your intolerance. I've had enough. I'm done putting up with it. I'm leaving this house tonight." The words seemed to hit Mrs. Anderson like a physical blow. For once, she was speechless, her usual retorts and defenses failing her. She reached out, as if trying to physically pull her husband back, but Mr. Anderson was resolute. He then turned to us, Alex and me, with a proposition that took us by surprise. Let's not let this ruin our Christmas. Why don't we continue the celebration at your place? Emma, I know you had more of those wonderful dishes prepared. The offer was like a beacon of hope, a chance to salvage what was left of the evening. Absolutely, we'd love to have everyone over, I replied, my heart swelling with gratitude for the unexpected solidarity. In a flurry of activity, I called the guests who'd left, explaining the sudden change of venue and inviting them to join us at our house. To my relief and delight, everyone agreed, their spirits lifted by the promise of a more welcoming atmosphere. As we all reconvened at our home, the earlier tension seemed to melt away, replaced by warmth and laughter. The living room was filled with chatter and the clinking of glasses, as I brought out dish after dish of the food I'd originally prepared with so much love. The compliments flowed as freely as the wine, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and vindication. Alex and his father pitched in, making sure everyone was comfortable and well-fed, while Danny, ever the center of attention, regaled our guests with tales of his school adventures. It was, against all odds, turning into a wonderful Christmas. As the evening drew to a close, and our guests started to leave, each one made a point to thank us for the lovely time, their earlier discomfort forgotten. Mr. Anderson stayed behind, helping us clean up, his earlier resolve softened by the evening's successes but still determined to follow through with his decision. Mrs. Anderson, meanwhile, spent the night alone, a consequence of her actions and choices. It was a somber reminder that the spirit of Christmas, of family and togetherness, couldn't be forced but had to be nurtured with kindness and understanding. That Christmas, while it started with division and discord, ended with unity and joy. It was a testament to the strength of family, not just the one we're born into but the one we choose and build through our actions and compassion. And as I looked around at the happy faces of our impromptu gathering, I knew that, despite everything, we had indeed had a great evening. In the wake of the Christmas upheaval, life took a turn I never would have guessed. Mr. Anderson went through with the divorce, leaving Mrs. Anderson on her own. Then, out of the blue, she called me, her voice a mix of desperation and hope, asking if I could somehow bridge the gap between her and Mr. Anderson. I just can't, I told her firmly, my mind flashing back to the pain in my son's eyes when she called him a liar. What you did to Danny, to all of us. I can't just forget it. So, there she was, moving out of the house she'd lived in for years, into a rented apartment that was a far cry from the comfort she was accustomed to. Her savings were thin, and the allowance from Mr. Anderson barely covered the essentials. Last I heard, she'd started working part-time at a local store, a reality she never imagined for herself. One evening, while Alex and I were clearing up after dinner, I brought it up. Can you believe she's working at the store now? I mused, not sure how to feel about it. Alex leaned against the counter, drying a plate.
Yeah,
I heard. Hard to believe, right? But, honestly, it feels like karma in a way. Her actions, everything that led to this. It's like she's finally facing the consequences. I nodded, the sponge in my hand pausing on a stubborn spot. I do feel bad, on some level. But then I remember Danny's face that night, and my sympathy just fades.
Yeah,
Alex sighed, setting the plate aside. It's a tough situation all around. But she did bring it on herself. All those years of bitter comments and manipulative behavior. It's sad, but maybe this will be a wake-up call for her. We shared a quiet moment, the complexity of family ties weighing heavily between us. Do you think she'll change? I asked, genuinely curious about his take. Alex shrugged, a hint of sadness in his eyes. I hope so, for her sake. But people only change if they want to, not because we want them to. All we can do is move forward and make sure our little family stays strong, surrounded by love and respect. His words, simple yet profound, resonated with me. The saga with Mrs. Anderson was a stark reminder of how fragile relationships could be, and the importance of nurturing them with kindness and honesty. As we finished up in the kitchen and settled down for the evening, I felt a sense of peace. Despite the trials, our family had emerged stronger, more united. The future was uncertain, but as long as we had each other, we could face whatever came our way with grace and resilience.
My name's Sarah, and if you're expecting a fairy tale, you might want to look elsewhere. My life's been anything but. By now, I'm a microsurgeon, got a decent house, and you could say I've done alright for myself. But let me take you back to where it all started, back when life was anything but easy. I was just 8 when my dad passed away. He was the one person who made me feel like I was worth something. After he was gone, my mom, Ellen, didn't waste any time finding a new man. Mark, my stepdad, looked at me like I was a piece of gum stuck to his shoe from day one. Mark never laid a hand on me, but man, did he have a way with words. It was like he had a talent for making me feel like I was just taking up space. My mom? She might as well have been a ghost for all the defending she did. Can't you do anything right? Mark would bark at me for just about anything, laughing too loud, forgetting the dishes, you name it. It was like I was living with a ticking time bomb, never knowing what would. And then, when Mom got pregnant again and had my little sister, Emily, things went from bad to worse. I was thrilled to have a sister, don't get me wrong, but Mark saw it as the final nail in my coffin. We've got our own kid now. We don't need to be wasting resources on her, he told Mom, like I wasn't even there. You're just too much, Sarah. Always making a mess, always in the way, he'd complain. My own mother just nodded along, as if agreeing that I was nothing but a problem. One time, I tore my pants playing outside, a normal kid thing, right? But not in Mark's eyes. Look at her, just can't keep herself out of trouble. Tearing clothes now, what's next? Ellen, she's your daughter, but she's a disaster. Mom's response? Mark's right, Sarah. You need to be more careful. We can't afford to keep replacing your clothes. It felt like every little thing I did was under a microscope, every mistake blown up to be some kind of major catastrophe. My laughter, my tears, even just being me, it was all too much for them, or so they made it seem. Even as a kid, I got the message loud and clear. I was the outsider, the one who didn't fit into this picture-perfect family Mark and Mom were trying to paint. And with every passing day, that feeling of being superfluous, of being an unwanted extra, just kept growing. After the whole debacle with Mark and Mom, I found myself landing at Aunt Linda's doorstep. Think of it as going from the frying pan into the fire. Aunt Linda, Dad's sister, had this vibe like she'd chew you up and spit you out for breakfast without a second thought. Great, another mouth to feed, she grumbled the day I showed up with my suitcase, a little lost and a lot scared. Her house was the strict, no-nonsense zone where fun went to die. And me? I was about to become its newest inmate. The rules were simple, do as told, don't mess up, and maybe, just maybe, you'll get through the day without a lecture. Fat chance of that happening with me being, well, me. Can't you do anything right, Sarah? Aunt Linda's favorite greeting, usually after I'd done something like leaving a light on or not making my bed so you could bounce a quarter off it. One day, I forgot to take the trash out, a mortal sin in Linda's house. You're just as useless as your mother said. Can't even remember a simple task, she barked, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. I'm sorry, Aunt Linda. It won't happen again, I stammered, trying to keep my voice steady. Apologies were like fuel to her fire, though. Sorry doesn't cut it, girl. You live under my roof, you follow my rules. Got it? Or is that too complicated for you to understand? Her words were like daggers, each one hitting its mark. It wasn't all bad, though. Some days, when I managed to stay under the radar, I'd find a quiet corner and lose myself in books, my escape from the constant criticism. But even that was a gamble. Reading again? That's not going to get you anywhere. You need to learn to do something useful, Linda would scoff, as if reading was a crime. The worst part wasn't the chores or the strict rules, it was the loneliness. I missed my sister, Emily, and even though Mom and Mark were no saints, there was a part of me that longed for something familiar, something like home. But Aunt Linda's place? It felt more like a prison. One evening, I tried to cook dinner, a peace offering of sorts. I was no chef, but I figured spaghetti couldn't be too hard. Boy, was I wrong. The sauce ended up everywhere but in the pot, a literal hot mess. Linda walked in, and her face went from 0 to furious in a second. "What in the world do you think you're doing? This kitchen is a disaster." I wanted to help. "To make dinner," I mumbled, my attempt at being helpful turning into yet another failure. "Help? You call this helping? You've just made more work for me. Don't ever try this again. You're more trouble than you're worth," she snapped, her words stinging like salt in a wound. That night, I cried myself to sleep, not for the first time since landing in her care. It was clear I was nothing but a burden to her, just like I had been to Mom and Mark. The message was loud and clear: I didn't belong anywhere. The worst part wasn't the constant chores or the never-ending criticism, it was the way she made me feel about myself. "You're just worthless, you know that? No wonder your mom dumped you here. She's probably relieved to be rid of you," she'd hiss whenever I dared to talk back or question her. Deep down, I clung to this naive hope that my mom would realize she missed me, that she'd come back for me. I used to imagine her showing up at Linda's doorstep, apologizing for everything and taking me back home. I believed, foolishly, that she still loved me, that maybe she was just too caught up with my stepdad and sister to reach out. One day, desperation got the better of me. I snuck into Aunt Linda's room and grabbed her phone, my heart racing as I dialed my mom's number. The phone rang, and for a moment, I held my breath, hoping for, I don't know, a miracle? "Hello?" Mom's voice came through, unfamiliar and distant. "Mom, it's me, Sarah. I miss you," I stammered, tears choking my words. There was a pause, a heartbeat of silence that felt like an eternity. Then, "Sarah, you shouldn't have called. Don't call me again. You don't need me." The line went dead. So did something inside me. That call shattered any illusion of love or care from her. I was truly alone. Aunt Linda found out, of course. She always found out everything. "You little thief. How dare you use my phone without permission?" she raged, her face twisted in anger. The punishment that followed was harsh, more for the betrayal she felt than the act itself. That night, as I lay in my bed, nursing my bruises, both physical and emotional, a hard truth settled in. My mom didn't love me. She never would. And Aunt Linda's words echoed in my mind, a cruel mantra that seemed to confirm my worst fears. No one needs you. After the whole debacle with Aunt Linda, I found myself standing on the doorstep of Grandma Judy's house, my bags feeling like they were filled with rocks instead of clothes. I wasn't sure what to expect. My memories of Grandma were fuzzy at best, and Aunt Linda's parting words, "Good luck with her, you'll need it," weren't exactly comforting. Grandma Judy opened the door, and there she was, a stern look on her face that didn't exactly scream welcome home. "So, you're here," she said, her voice as cold as I remembered Aunt Linda's heart. "Come in, then. We've got rules in this house. You'll follow them." The first few weeks were rough. I kept to myself, trying not to step on any landmines. Grandma was tough, her words sharp as knives. Every mistake I made, she was there, pointing it out. "Can't you do anything right? Your mother really didn't teach you much, did she?" she'd snap. But something strange happened as the days turned into weeks. I started to see cracks in Grandma's tough exterior. One evening, as I sat at the kitchen table struggling with some math homework, she sat down beside me, her tone less harsh than usual. "Let me see that," she said, taking the pencil from my hand. Math was always my strong suit. It was the first time we'd done anything together that didn't involve a lecture. And as we worked through the problems, I caught her smiling at me, a genuine smile that I hadn't seen from any family member in, well, ever. "Thanks, Grandma," I said, surprised at the warmth spreading through my chest. "Don't thank me yet. You've still got to pass that test, she replied, but the edge in her voice was gone. Days turned into months, and those months into a year. Grandma and we found a rhythm. She taught me how to cook, telling me stories about my mom as a child, stories I clung to because they made me feel closer to the woman who'd left me behind. Your mom was a wild one, always getting into trouble. You've got her spirit, Grandma said one day, a hint of pride in her voice. It was during one of our cooking lessons that I finally opened up about how much it hurt, being abandoned by Mom. Grandma listened, really listened, and when I was done, she wrapped me in a hug so tight I could barely breathe. Your mom, she made her choices, but they're not on you. You're strong, stronger than you realize. And you're wanted, here, with me. That was the turning point. For the first time since Dad died, I felt like I belonged somewhere. Grandma wasn't just a relative, she was becoming my family, the kind you choose, not the kind you're born into. One evening, out of the blue, Grandma said, I've been thinking. How would you feel about making this official? You know, adoption. I was speechless. The thought of belonging, really belonging to someone again, filled me with a mix of hope and disbelief. You mean it? I asked, barely daring to believe it. I've never been more serious about anything, Grandma replied, her gaze steady on mine. I want you to be in every sense of the word. Turning my life around wasn't easy, but with Grandma Judy's backing, I started to see a future for myself, one where I wasn't defined by my past. Medicine. That was the dream. It sounded crazy at first, even to me. I mean, going from feeling worthless to dreaming of becoming a microsurgeon? But Grandma, she believed in me, more than I ever believed in myself. Medicine, huh? Grandma raised an eyebrow the day I told her. That's a tough road, Sarah. You sure you're up for it? Yeah, I am, I replied, more to convince myself than her. I want to do something meaningful, you know? Help people. Grandma nodded, her expression softening. Then you'll do it. And I'll be right here, cheering you on. Getting into medical college was my next big hurdle. The books, the late nights, the endless exams, it was like diving into an ocean without knowing how to swim. But every time I thought about quitting, I'd remember Grandma's words, her faith in me. That kept me going. One day, after I got my acceptance letter, Grandma and I sat down at the kitchen table, the letter lying between us like a trophy. I knew you could do it, she said, her eyes misty. I couldn't have done it without you, Grandma, I admitted, feeling a lump form in my throat. None of that now. She brushed off the sentiment with a wave of her hand. You did the work, kid. You earned this. Medical school was a blur of sleepless nights, relentless studying, and the constant pressure to prove I belonged there. I made friends, sure, but I always felt like the odd one out, the girl who had clawed her way in from a world they knew nothing about. Hey, Sarah, you coming out with us tonight? A classmate, Jake, asked me one day. We're celebrating the end of exams. I hesitated, my mind on the mountain of study material waiting for me back at my dorm. I don't know, Jake. I've got so much to catch up on. Come on, everyone needs a break. Plus, you aced the exams. If anyone deserves to celebrate, it's you. Maybe he was right. For once, I decided to let go, to be just another medical student, not the girl with the chip on her shoulder. That night, I laughed and danced, feeling lighter than I had in years. But as medical school progressed, the challenges grew tougher. There were moments when I felt like I was in over my head, drowning in a sea of knowledge I could never fully grasp. One particularly tough day, after failing a simulation test, I called Grandma, fighting back tears. I don't know if I can do this, Grandma. It's just so hard. Sarah, her voice was stern, yet gentle, over the phone. You faced harder things in life than this. You're going to be an amazing doctor. Now, dry those tears and get back to it. You hear me? Her words were like a beacon in the storm. I dug my heels in, refusing to let this dream slip through my fingers. I studied harder, pushed myself further, and slowly, things started to click. The day I graduated, Grandma was there in the front row, her face beaming with pride. "I told you, didn't I? My granddaughter, the doctor," she said, wrapping me in a hug that felt like home. "Thanks, Grandma," I whispered, holding back tears. "For believing in me when no one else did. Always, Sarah. Always." Graduating from medical college was a milestone, sure, but it was the internship that really tested me. Long hours, tough cases, and always that pressure to prove I belonged there. But every time I felt like I was in over my head, I'd think back to what Grandma Judy had taught me about strength and perseverance. "Remember, Sarah, it's not about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward," she'd say, her voice a steady presence in my mind during those grueling nights at the hospital. Our conversations, whenever I managed to snatch some time away from the hospital, were my lifeline. We'd sit in her kitchen, sipping tea, and I'd share every detail of my day, every success, and every setback. She'd listen, really listen, and then offer her nuggets of wisdom. "You're doing important work, Sarah. Healing others, that's a noble path," she'd say, her eyes twinkling with pride. And in those moments, I felt like I could do anything. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. Just as I was settling into my role, feeling like I was finally contributing something meaningful, Grandma Judy passed away. It was sudden, a shock to my system that left me reeling. She was my rock, my family, and suddenly, she was gone. Organizing the funeral was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. I wanted it to be perfect, a fitting tribute to the incredible woman she was. But as I looked around the chapel, I realized something heartbreaking. There were no relatives there, no blood family. Just friends, colleagues, and the many lives Grandma Judy had touched. It was a stark reminder of how alone I truly was in that familial sense. Yet, as I stood there, delivering the eulogy, I felt a strange sense of strength. Grandma Judy had taught me well. She'd prepared me for this moment, not just to face the world without her, but to do so with grace and courage. "After everything, it's just me now," I said, my voice steady, despite the tears threatening to fall. "But I carry a piece of her with me, in every life I touch, in every decision I make. She was my family, my everything. And though she's gone, her legacy lives on through me." The silence of my apartment was a sanctuary, a rare moment of peace in my otherwise hectic life. That was until the knock came, sharp and insistent, echoing through the room like a foreboding omen. I hesitated, knowing instinctively that whatever lay on the other side of that door was not going to be good. My intuition didn't disappoint. Opening the door, I was met with the all-too-familiar faces of my past, Ellen, my mother, with her practiced smile that never quite reached her eyes, Mark, my stepfather, whose disdain for me was barely concealed beneath his surface-level politeness, and Emily, my half-sister, looking uncomfortable and out of place. Mom wasted no time. "Sarah, darling, we've missed you. It's been too long." Her voice was sugary, the falseness of her affection grating against my nerves. I chuckled. "Really? Because it feels just right to me. What brings you here after all these years?" Mark intervened in the conversation. "Cut the crap, Ellen. We're not here for a family reunion. We're here about Judy's inheritance." The mention of Grandma Judy's name tightened my chest, a mix of grief and anger swirling within me. Mom couldn't stand it. "Sarah, we're here for our share. You know, of Judy's things. It's only fair," she declared, her voice a mix of entitlement and false sweetness. I couldn't help but scoff at her audacity. "Fair? You're talking to me about fair now? After 19 years of radio silence?" She bristled at that, her eyes narrowing. "Don't be ungrateful, Sarah. You've made a fortune for yourself, and now with Judy's inheritance. Well, it's only right you share." The laughter that burst from me was sharp, almost bitter. "Ungrateful? You've got some nerve. You left me, remember? I owe you nothing. Their audacity was astounding, their presence in my home a stark reminder of the pain they'd caused. Mom's face tightened, a mix of anger and something else, maybe shock. You're rich now, a successful doctor. And Judy's inheritance. You must give us our due, or we'll take this to court. We'll claim alimony. That's when I let the bomb drop. Good luck with that. Judy adopted me. Legally, you're nothing to me now. The color drained from her face, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Mark's face darkened, his posture stiffening as he stepped closer, his voice a low growl. You think you've won, huh? You'll regret this, Sarah. You haven't seen the last of us. But they didn't scare me. Not anymore. I've dealt with worse. I'm not afraid of you. Now, please leave my apartment, I said, my voice steady. In the aftermath of my family's brazen demand for a share of Grandma Judy's inheritance, I foolishly believed that chapter of my life was closed. How wrong I was. Their audacity knew no bounds. They had taken up residence in Judy's house as if it were their ancestral right. The news came from Mrs. Henderson, a neighbor with a penchant for keeping an eye out, her voice tinged with worry over the phone. Sarah, dear, I thought you should know, there are people living in your grandma's house. Didn't seem right not to tell you. Fueled by a mix of anger and a sense of duty to Judy's memory, I went to confront them. They were sprawled in the living room, making themselves at home in a place they had no right to be. What the hell do you think you're doing here? I demanded, my voice firm, trying to keep the bubbling anger at bay. Mark, ever the provocateur, lounged on the sofa with a smirk that made my blood boil. Oh, look who decided to show up. We're just making ourselves comfortable, seeing as we're family and all, he retorted, his words dripping with unwarranted entitlement. Their audacity was astounding. You're no family of mine. And you sure as hell don't belong here. This is my property, legally left to me by Grandma Judy. You need to leave. Now. I shot back, standing my ground against the man who had made my childhood a misery. Mom, with her skewed sense of reality, chimed in. Don't be so dramatic, Sarah. We're just here for what's rightfully ours. Judy would have wanted it that way. Her attempt to manipulate Judy's wishes was transparent and pathetic. You wouldn't know what Judy wanted. You weren't there for her, remember? You have no claim here, and if you don't leave, I'll have to involve the police, I warned them, my patience wearing thin. The threat seemed to hit home. Mark stood up, trying to use his height to intimidate me, but those tactics no longer worked on me. You wouldn't dare, he bluffed, but his confidence was faltering. Try me. You have until the end of the day. If you're not out by then, I'll have the authorities here so fast your heads will spin, I declared, the resolve in my voice unmistakable. They knew then that I was serious, that the scared little girl they once knew was gone, replaced by someone who wouldn't be bullied or intimidated. They left, their departure marked not by triumph, but by the realization that they had underestimated me. I watched them go, a sense of victory mixed with the exhaustion of dealing with their never-ending greed. In the days following the showdown, a semblance of peace had begun to settle over me. But that tranquility was shattered by a call from Mrs. Henderson. Sarah, dear, you need to come over. Someone's gone and broken the windows at your grandma's place. Rushing over, the sight that greeted me was a jarring reminder of the spite my family was capable of. I bet it was Mark, I muttered under my breath, my suspicions voiced aloud without proof to back them. Mrs. Henderson, ever the watchful guardian of our street, chimed in with a revelation that sparked a flicker of hope amidst the anger. You know, I've got those cameras installed. They point right over here. Maybe we caught who did it. Together, we pored over the footage, the grainy images flickering on the screen until the unmistakable figure of my stepfather appeared, stones in hand, malice in his actions. Armed with the evidence, my next call was to the police. I explained the situation, my voice steady, the evidence clear. I have video proof of my stepfather vandalizing the property. He's caused significant damage. The officer on the line was sympathetic, promising swift action. "We'll handle it from here, ma'am. We've got enough to bring him in." True to their word, the police acted, and Mark was detained, the reality of his actions catching up with him at last. The threat of legal repercussions loomed large, and faced with the prospect of arrest, my mother and stepfather did the only thing they seemed capable of when confronted with the consequences of their actions: they disappeared. In the aftermath, the silence that settled over Grandma Judy's house was different. It was not the oppressive silence of abandonment, but the peaceful quiet of resolution. The broken windows would be repaired, not just as a physical mending, but as a symbol of my own healing from the years of neglect and manipulation. "My name's Emma, and I'm just your regular 30-year-old nurse. I fell for Alex, a university teacher with the kindest eyes you've ever seen. Now, his family? That's a whole other story. His dad, Robert, is a big shot in the antique world, and his house? It's like stepping into a museum, each room crammed with stuff older than my grandma. The first time I walked into that house, I swear every step echoed. Paintings stared down from the walls, but the one that really got your attention was the portrait of Alex's mom, Maria, hung up like she owned the place. It was clear from the get-go she didn't approve of me. She had this way of looking you up and down, making you feel an inch tall. "So you're the nurse," she said, her voice all cool and unwelcoming. "I suppose you do, well, with what you have." I tried to smile, but it was tough. Alex squeezed my hand, his way of saying, "Hang in there." "Then there's Lila, Alex's sister, the family's little princess. She doesn't work, just flits around from one party to another, living off Daddy's money. Another day, another dollar," she'd laugh, flipping her hair. "Well, not for me. I don't do dollars, I spend them." Robert usually kept out of the drama, buried in his books or cleaning some ancient vase. But even he couldn't hide the disappointment when he looked at Lila or the way Maria treated me. One day, we were all sitting in the living room, which felt more like sitting in a stuffy history lesson, with all the antiques glaring down at you. Maria was holding court as usual, talking about some auction or another. "Emma, darling, do try to keep up," she'd say, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness. "I know these things are probably beyond your pay grade." I bit my tongue, trying not to snap back. Alex was talking to his dad about some university stuff, trying to stay out of the firing line. And Lila? She was on her phone, probably texting her latest boyfriend or shopping online for things she'd never use. "Ugh, Daddy, I need more money," she whined, tossing her phone down. "Life is so expensive when you have taste." Robert sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose like he was trying to ward off a headache. "Lila, we've talked about this. You need to start taking responsibility." "Oh, lighten up," she shot back, rolling her eyes. "It's not like we're poor." The tension in that room could have cut glass. I often wondered how Alex turned out so normal, growing up in a house like this. But then, he'd catch my eye and give me that little smile that said, "We're in this together," and somehow, I felt like we could take on the world. That's our life, teetering between normalcy and the madness of the House of Antiques. Every visit was a tightrope walk of polite smiles and biting tongues, but it was our life, and we were in it together. After what felt like the millionth awkward dinner at the in-laws, Alex's phone buzzed with a message that had him up and grabbing his coat like the house was on fire. "It's Dad. Something's gone down with Lila," he muttered, his voice tight. I threw on my jacket, my heart hammering. Whatever it was, it sounded bad. The drive over was silent, both of us lost in our thoughts, the night pressing in around us. We got to the house, and the scene was chaos. Robert was pacing, his face like thunder, while Maria was on the couch, her makeup smeared from crying. And Lila? She was nowhere to be seen. "What happened?" Alex demanded, going straight to his dad. Robert looked up, his eyes red. "Lila, she stole a piece from my collection. Tried to sell it to some local dealer." I gasped. Even for Lila, that was low. "Why would she do that?" I asked, more to myself than anyone else. "Because she's spoiled and selfish." Maria snapped from the couch, her voice sharp with anger and something else, shame, maybe. Alex ran a hand through his hair, looking like he was trying to piece together a puzzle with half the pieces missing. Is she here? Robert shook his head. No, she took off. But not before the buyer recognized the piece. An old friend of mine. So, what now? Alex's voice was flat, like he was bracing himself for the worst. Now, Robert said, his voice suddenly steel. Now we deal with it. She's brought the police to our doorstep. This is serious. The weight of his words hung in the air. This wasn't just family drama anymore, this was real, legal trouble. Maria stood up, her usual poise gone, replaced by a frantic energy. We have to protect her. She's our daughter. And what about the family's reputation? What about right and wrong? Robert countered, his voice rising. I felt like I was watching a tennis match, the argument bouncing back and forth with increasing intensity. But underneath it all, there was a sense of something breaking, something that couldn't be fixed with a few harsh words or a stern look. Alex stepped in, his voice calm but firm. Let's just figure out what to do next. Okay? We can't undo what's been done, but we can figure out how to move forward. Robert nodded, the fight draining out of him. He looked old, suddenly, the weight of his daughter's actions bowing his shoulders. We spent the rest of the night talking in low, tense voices, trying to come up with a plan. Lila had screwed up, big time, and now we were all caught in the fallout. It was late when we finally left, the house feeling more like a mausoleum than ever. The drive home was quiet again, but this time it was heavy, the air thick with unsaid things, and worries about what the morning would bring. I looked over at Alex, his profile lit by the passing street lights. You okay? I asked, my voice small in the car. He glanced at me, a tired smile flickering on his face. Yeah, I'm okay. We'll get through this. We always do. But as we drove back to our little slice of normal, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning, that Lila's fall from grace was going to drag us all down with her. And I was scared, not just for us, but for what it would mean for the family we'd tried so hard to fit into, even when it felt like they'd never really let us in at all. It was a regular evening, or as regular as it could be with the recent family drama, when Alex got another one of those calls. I could tell by the drop in his face it was bad. He hung up and looked at me. Dad's kicked Lila out. What? Why? I was shocked. Robert had always been the type to keep the peace, no matter what. He wouldn't say over the phone. We have to go over there. Now. The house felt different as we walked in, like a storm had passed through, leaving everything off kilter. Maria was in the corner of the room, her usual stern demeanor crumbled into something small and fragile. Robert sat like a statue, his eyes fixed on some invisible point in the distance. What happened? Alex's voice was steady, but I could hear the underlying tremor of concern. Robert looked up, his face carved from stone. She did something unforgivable. The word hung heavy in the air, filling the room with a sense of dread. I felt my stomach twist. What on earth could Lila have done? Maria finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. She tried to hurt Robert. For the inheritance. I felt the blood drain from my face. It was one thing to be a bit of a brat, but this? This was monstrous. Alex looked like he'd been slapped. Hurt him? How? Robert shook his head. Doesn't matter how. What matters is she's no longer welcome here. Not after that. The conversation that followed was a blur of disbelief and anger. Alex and I left late, the house feeling more like a crime scene than a family home. As we drove home, the silence was suffocating. I wanted to say something, anything to break the tension, but the words wouldn't come. Finally, Alex spoke, his voice rough. Can you believe it? My own sister, and Dad, I've never seen him like that. I reached over and squeezed his hand. I'm here for you, you know that, right? He squeezed back. Yeah, I know. It's just, how did it get to this point? How did we not see it coming? I didn't have an answer for him. How do you see something like that coming? How do you prepare for the moment when someone you grew up with, someone you thought you knew, crosses a line so far there's no coming back? We got home and tried to carry on as normal, but the shadow of Lila's actions hung over us. It was there in the quiet moments, the pauses in conversation, the way Alex's eyes would darken whenever his family was mentioned. The days passed, but the tension remained, a constant, unspoken presence in our lives. We were all waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the next disaster to strike. But for now, all we could do was wait and hope that somehow, someway, we could find a path back to something like normal. Or at least, learn to live with the new normal that Lila's actions had forced upon us. The days had started to blend together when out of nowhere, Alex's phone shattered the silence of our morning routine. The look on his face said it all before he even spoke a word. "My dad, he passed away last night," he said, voice barely above a whisper. Shock coursed through me. Robert, with his stoic presence and antique-filled house, gone just like that? It felt surreal as we rushed over to the family home, the place now a stark reminder of what had been. We entered the house to find Maria, not in tears or sorrow, but with a cold, almost relieved expression. Her usual stern face had an added layer of calculation as she received the condolences. As Alex tried to console her, she shrugged off his comfort with a briskness that took me aback. Well, it was bound to happen. He was getting on, and with all the stress lately. Her voice trailed off, not with grief, but an unsettling pragmatism. Throughout the day, as people came and went, offering their sympathies, Maria seemed more concerned with discussing the practicalities of inheritance than mourning her husband. "Without a will, it's pretty clear how things will be divided," she said, her voice sharp and businesslike. "The majority should rightfully come to me and Lila." The way she spoke about the future, her future, with such anticipation was chilling. There was no love lost here, no tender memories shared. Just cold, hard anticipation for what she stood to gain. Alex was quiet, his face a mask of disbelief and pain. Not just for the father he lost, but for the mother who seemed to shed her mourning like an unwanted coat. As evening fell and the house emptied, the reality of the situation set in. The lack of a will meant a legal tangle, one that Maria seemed almost eager to dive into. Her eyes had a gleam I hadn't noticed before, a sharpness that was almost predatory. "We'll have to speak to the lawyer first thing," she said, her voice brisk and efficient. "Make sure everything is in order." Alex nodded, his usual warmth buried deep under layers of grief and shock. "Yeah, we'll handle it," he replied, his voice steady but distant. We left the house under the cloak of night. The once grand home now felt hollow, filled with the echo of a life that was suddenly and starkly over. The car ride home was silent, a heavy stillness between us. I reached over, holding Alex's hand tightly, a silent message of support and love. He squeezed back, a small thank you in a world that had turned upside down. But as we drove, the city lights passing by in a blur, a deep unease settled over me. Maria's cold detachment, her almost eager anticipation of the inheritance, it was all wrong. And as the reality of Robert's death began to settle in, so too did the realization that this was far from over. The battle for the future, for the legacy and memory of a man who'd meant so much to us, was just beginning. And it was going to be anything but straightforward. "Emma, Dad mentioned a will not long before he passed. He made it clear I was the main heir," Alex confided in me one quiet evening, a serious look etching his face. "Without it, Mom and Lila stand to inherit most of the estate. We have to find it before they do." The urgency in his voice propelled us to the family home the next day. As we approached, the usual somber grandeur of the house was replaced by a sense of foreboding. We walked in to find a scene of chaos, rooms torn apart, furniture overturned, and papers scattered everywhere. Maria and Lila were in the thick of it, their faces set in grim determination as they rifled through Robert's belongings. The air was thick with desperation and the sharp tang of greed. "What on earth?" I gasped, stepping over a pile of books. Alex's jaw tightened. "They're looking for the will. They want to destroy it." Maria looked up, her eyes darting between us. "It's for the best. If that will surfaces, everything will go to Alex. It's not fair. We deserve our share too." Lila, who was rummaging through a desk, didn't even bother to look up. "Finders keepers," she muttered, her voice laced with venom. Alex moved forward, his voice rising. "This is Dad's legacy we're talking about. It's not just about money or property. It's about respecting his wishes." But Maria was unyielding, her gaze cold. "Respect? He left us to pick up the pieces. If there's a will that cuts us out, then it's better off gone." The search continued, more frantic now. Alex and I joined in, not to help them destroy it, but to save it from their clutches. We turned over every document, peered behind every portrait, and checked in every unlikely place, the tension between us and Maria and Lila palpable. As the day wore on, the house transformed from a mausoleum of antiques to a battlefield of wills. The once still air was now filled with the sound of shuffling papers and the occasional sharp word. Finally, as the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the windows, Alex paused, his exhaustion written all over his face. "We have to find it, Emma. It's what Dad wanted." I nodded, my hands dirty and my spirit weary. "We'll find it, Alex. We have to." We left the house that day with nothing to show for our efforts, but a growing sense of dread. Without the will, Maria and Lila would indeed inherit the majority of Robert's estate, and the thought of his last wishes being so callously disregarded was more than we could bear. The drive home was quiet, each of us lost in our thoughts, the weight of our failure heavy on our hearts. But the search was far from over. We knew that somewhere, hidden among the chaos and greed, was a piece of paper that held the key to honoring a man's last wishes. And we were determined to find it, no matter what it took. The days since the will's disappearance had been tough and tense. Then, one afternoon, a knock at the door broke the monotony. A courier handed Alex a parcel, his expression unreadable as he turned it over in his hands. "What is it?" I asked, watching the curiosity play out on his face. "It's from Dad," he said, his voice carrying a mix of hope and anxiety. He tore open the parcel to reveal a digital recorder. A message from his late father. We listened intently as Robert's voice filled the room, echoing from the little speaker. He spoke of his final wishes, his love for his family, and his hope for the future. The recording was heartfelt and clear, but as it ended, Alex's face fell into deep lines of concern. "This is it. This is Dad's will and his last words," he said. "But I know Mom and Lila, they won't give up easily. They'll deny everything or twist it to their advantage. We need something more compelling." I thought for a moment, an idea forming in my mind. "What about my sister, the medium? What if we invite her to a memorial for your dad? She could conduct a séance, maybe bring Dad's spirit through. It might just shake Mom and Lila enough to slip up or confess." Alex looked at me, skepticism warring with desperation in his eyes. "Do you think that would work? Would she come?" I nodded confidently. "She'll come. And if anyone can bring Dad's presence back, it's her. It might make Mom and Lila think twice about crossing us if they believe Dad's watching." The decision was made. We'd arrange a somber gathering to honor Robert, a memorial of sorts. But with my sister's help, it would be more than just a remembrance. It would be a chance to bring the truth to light, to confront the greed and deception head-on. The evening of the memorial, the room was draped in a somber ambience, softened only by the dim glow of candles flickering in the corners. My sister, the medium, had an air of mystique about her, draped in flowing robes that added to her imposing presence. As she entered the room, a hush fell over the relatives, their eyes wide with a mix of skepticism and awe. "Thank you for gathering here," she began, her voice steady and commanding. "Tonight, we seek closure and truth from beyond." As the lights dimmed, leaving only the candlelight to dance across the faces of the assembled family, my sister instructed everyone to join hands. I felt Alex squeeze my hand tightly, a silent signal of mutual support. With a deep breath, my sister began to invoke the spirit of Robert. The room was heavy with anticipation, every creak and whisper amplified in the charged silence. Then, at the perfect moment, I discreetly turned on the recording Alex's father had sent us. Robert's voice, clear and unmistakable, filled the room, emanating from a hidden speaker. My family, the recording began. I speak to you beyond the grave to settle matters of my estate. There is indeed a will. In it, I have left the bulk of my property to my son, Alex. To my wife, Maria, I leave a modest monthly allowance. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the room. Maria's face turned pale, her eyes wide with shock. Beside her, Lila's expression twisted into one of disbelief and anger. And to my daughter, Lila, I leave nothing. The voice continued, stern and resolute. Her actions, her attempt to poison me, have not only betrayed my trust but have significantly worsened my health. The accusation hung in the air like a thick fog, settling over the room with a weight that was almost tangible. Lila stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor, her face a mask of rage and denial. This is nonsense, she spat out, looking wildly around the room. But know this, the voice of Robert continued, unfazed by the outburst. The will is hidden within the house, in a place none would think to look. As the recording ended, the room erupted into chaos. Maria, tears streaming down her face, looked utterly defeated, her earlier composure shattered. Lila was shouting, her words a tangled mess of accusations and denials. The relatives were a mixture of shock and gossip, their eyes darting between the key players of this family drama. Alex stood, his face calm amid the storm. We will find the will, he declared, his voice cutting through the noise. And we will honor my father's wishes. The night ended with more questions than answers, the house abuzz with speculation and whispered theories. As the guests departed, leaving behind a trail of uneasy glances and hurried farewells, we were left to ponder the next steps. As we tidied up, the weight of the evening's revelations pressing down on us, Alex turned to me, his expression a mixture of gratitude and determination. Thank you, he said simply, his hand finding mine. It's what family does, I replied, squeezing his hand in return. After all that mess with the will and Lila trying to poison her dad, things around the house got real quiet, real quick. Lila took off into the night, scared stiff of the cops catching up with her for what she did. Can't say anyone was surprised. She was always a bit of a wild card, but this? This was something else. Maria, meanwhile, wasn't wasting any time feeling sorry for herself. Before anyone could blink, she started hauling out the fancy stuff from the house, piece by piece. Everything except her own giant picture hanging in the main room. It was like she was trying to grab what she could before the ship sank. But she didn't know what we found stashed behind her portrait. Alex and I were poking around when we found the will hidden back there, all official and legal-like, and some papers that pretty much proved what Lila did to her dad. You should have seen Alex's face when we found it. It was like Christmas came early. Reading the will, it was all there in black and white. Alex was getting the lion's share of everything. Maria was left with just a bit of cash to keep her going every month, and Lila? Well, she got a big fat nothing for her troubles. Maria packed up her bags and left the house, probably off to live a quieter life with her allowance. And Lila? Who knows where she ended up? Hiding out, probably, hoping the cops don't find her. So, there we were, me and Alex, left in this big old house. It felt weird, knowing everything that went down there. But we started fixing it up, making it feel more like ours. Less of a museum and more of a home, you know? One evening, as we were sitting down after a long day of cleaning and sorting, Alex looked at me and just said, "We did it, huh?" "Yeah," I replied, looking around at what was now our place. We did it. Together. It felt good, sitting there with him, knowing we'd been through the ringer and came out the other side. The house had its ghosts, sure, but it was ours now. And whatever the future held, we'd face it as a team. That's what family does, right? That's what we were now. A real team. I've always believed life doesn't give you anything you can't handle, but it sure does like to test your limits. That's what I was thinking as I packed up the last of my boxes in the small, sunlit apartment I'd called home for nearly a decade. "You're really doing it, huh, Emma? Big city, big job?" my neighbor, Joe, asked as he leaned against my open door, sipping from a can of beer. "Yeah, Joe. It's finally happening, I replied, taping up another box. Can't say I'm not a bit nervous, though. Ah, you'll do fine. You're tough as nails, Joe chuckled, his voice gruff with years of smoking and late-night drinks. Just don't forget us little people when you're climbing that corporate ladder. I smiled, wiping my hands on my jeans. I could never forget you, Joe. You know too many of my secrets. We both laughed, the sound echoing in the now empty room. It felt strange to leave this place. It wasn't just the apartment, but everything it represented, my struggles, my wins, and the endless nights of studying while working 2 jobs to keep the lights on. After Joe left, I made one last call to the one person who mattered most. Hey, Mom, it's me. Just wanted to check in before I hit the road. Emma, darling, are you all packed? Did you eat something? My mother's voice was always filled with concern. Yeah, Mom, all packed. And I grabbed a sandwich, don't worry. Oh, good. I wish I could be there to help. Are you sure this is what you want, Emma? It's such a big change. I knew this move scared her. Since it had always been just the 2 of us, any change felt monumental. It's a great opportunity, Mom. I can't pass it up. I promise I'll visit soon, okay? There was a pause, the line crackling slightly. I know, honey. I'm proud of you. Just, be careful, okay? Hanging up, I took a deep breath, looking around the bare room once more. It wasn't just a new job. This was a fresh start, a chance to prove myself, and maybe, just maybe, make my mom proud. Driving to the new city was a blur of highway lines and radio static. When I arrived, the new branch office was imposing, all sleek glass and sharp angles, so different from the cozy, cluttered spaces I was used to. On my first day, nerves jittery and palms sweaty, I pushed through the revolving doors and into the lobby. I must have looked lost because a guy in a neatly pressed suit stopped in front of me, a friendly smile on his face. You must be Emma. I'm Mark, I'll be helping you get settled in, he said, extending his hand. Taking it, I was surprised by his firm grip. Thanks, I appreciate it. It's a bit overwhelming. Stick with me, and you'll be fine, Mark assured me with a nod. Let's start by introducing you to the team and then I'll show you your new office. As we walked through the corridors, his easy manner helped calm my nerves. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad. Maybe I could really make this work. First rule of the game here, Mark said as we approached a set of large double doors. Never let them see you sweat. I laughed, more at ease than I'd been all morning. Got it. No sweating. Exactly. You'll fit right in. Settling into the new job and city was like learning to dance to a completely new rhythm. The work was tougher, the stakes higher, and the pace relentless. But Mark was there every step of the way, showing me the ropes without making me feel like a total noob. Okay, so everyone uses this software here. It's not rocket science, but it might as well be if you've never seen it before, Mark explained as we sat in my new, stark office. He leaned over my desk, his fingers flying over the keyboard to demonstrate. I've used something similar in my last job, I said, trying to keep up. Good, you're not starting from scratch then, Mark said with a grin. You'll catch on quick. You always do. It wasn't just his knowledge that helped, it was his attitude. He didn't patronize or hover. Instead, he was straightforward and, to my relief, had a sense of humor that made the long hours easier. Hey, Emma, how about we grab a coffee? You look like you need a caffeine hit, Mark suggested one particularly grueling afternoon. I was born needing a caffeine hit, I quipped, standing to stretch my legs. At the coffee shop, the casual setting helped us step away from our roles at work. Mark shared stories about growing up in the city, and I found myself opening up about my small-town life and all the quirks that came with it. The more time we spent together, both in and out of work, the more I appreciated his company. He was easy to be around, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I could be myself. One evening after work, as we walked back to the office from a nearby diner, Mark stopped and looked at me seriously. Emma, I've been thinking. We're great partners at work, right? Right, I nodded, wondering where this was going. So, what if we think about making this a regular thing? Like, not just as colleagues or coffee buddies? He asked, scratching the back of his neck nervously. You mean, like, a date? I asked, trying not to sound too surprised. Yeah, exactly, a date. I like you, Emma. And I think we could be good together, he said, looking me straight in the eyes. I took a moment, considering. Mark was great. We got along, shared a lot of laughs, and he had already seen me at my worst, surviving on coffee and zero sleep. Plus, I was definitely interested. Okay, yeah. Let's try a date. I smiled, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. Great. It's a date then. How about this Friday? Dinner at that Italian place you said you loved? He suggested with a hopeful look. It's a plan. It's a date, I confirmed, and we both grinned, a little relieved. From that day on, things changed between us, but in a good way. We still worked together, still had our coffee runs, but now there was an added layer to our relationship, something that felt both thrilling and terrifying. 2 years slipped by quicker than I'd ever imagined. Mark and I got married, settling into a rhythm of life together that felt as natural as breathing. We were happy, genuinely so, but it wasn't all smooth sailing. I talked to my mom on the phone often, but only made it back home for the holidays. Each call, I noticed something was a bit off. Mom seemed more forgetful, her thoughts a bit scattered. It worried me. I even brought up the idea of her moving in with us, or considering a nursing home, but she was adamant. No, Emma, I'm fine on my own. Don't fuss over me, she'd say stubbornly, brushing off my concerns. As for my new in-laws, our relationship remained cool, distant even. They never really warmed up to me, treating me with a polite indifference that was hard to crack. At family gatherings, I often felt more like an outsider than a daughter-in-law. It was uncomfortable, but Mark was a solid presence by my side, always quick to divert the conversation or lighten the mood. Life had settled into a comfortable routine, Mark and I juggling work and home, while my worries about Mom's health simmered on the back burner. Then, Helen, my mother-in-law, started becoming more involved in our lives, and not in a way I appreciated. It started innocently enough, a phone call here and there, asking if we could pick up some groceries for her since we were already out shopping. Hey Emma, could you grab me some of that bread I like? Oh, and maybe some of that fancy cheese you got last time? I'll pay you back, promise, she'd say, her voice always upbeat, but somehow it felt forced. Sure, Helen. No problem, I'd reply, trying to keep the peace and make an effort. But the grocery lists grew longer, and the promises to pay back soon just stopped coming. One day, after I came home tired from a long day at work, I found Mark in the kitchen, sorting through a pile of receipts. What's all this? I asked, dropping my keys on the counter. It's from my mom, Mark said, not looking up. Your mom? What do you mean? I frowned, picking up a receipt. It was for a dinner at a high-end restaurant, a dinner I didn't attend. She's been asking me to pay for a lot of stuff. She asked you too, hasn't she? Mark asked, rubbing his temples. Yes, she has, I admitted, feeling a knot in my stomach. I thought it was just now and then. How bad is it? Mark spread the receipts on the counter, showing dinners, groceries, and even some clothes. It's adding up, Emma. This isn't just a few favors. It's becoming a regular thing. The next day, I decided to confront Helen about it. I called her, trying to keep my voice calm. Helen, we need to talk about the money, I began. It's getting a bit out of hand. Oh, Emma, I thought you didn't mind. Your family, after all. Helen's voice was light, but there was a sharpness to it that I hadn't noticed before. I don't mind helping, Helen, but this is more than helping. It's like we're your personal ATM, I said, the words harsher than I intended. There was a pause, and then Helen laughed, a short, humorless sound. Well, I didn't realize you were keeping tabs. I'll make sure not to bother you anymore. The call ended abruptly, leaving me staring at my phone in confusion. That night, I told Mark about the conversation. He was quiet for a long time, then he took my hand. "I'm sorry, Emma. I should have noticed sooner. I'll talk to her." After the money talk with Helen, things between us and Mark's parents turned frosty. They stopped asking for money, but the damage to our relationship was done. It was like walking on eggshells whenever we met, each conversation strained and filled with polite, hollow words. It was during my birthday dinner when the tension truly surfaced. We had invited both sets of parents to celebrate, hoping to smooth things over with a nice meal at our place. Mark's parents arrived last, and right off the bat, things felt off. Helen and Frank walked in without a gift, which wasn't a big deal to me, but the way they mentioned it struck a nerve. "We didn't bring a present. After all, Mark is the best gift we could have ever given you," Helen said with a tight smile as they entered. I forced a smile, trying to keep the evening light. "Well, I'm lucky to have him," I replied, guiding them into the living room where drinks were set up. Throughout dinner, the conversation veered from trivial to tense. Helen was particularly inquisitive that night, her questions sharp and probing. "So, Emma, how's your mother doing? Still living in that little house of hers?" she asked, stirring her drink casually. "Yeah, she's fine, thanks for asking. She loves that place, wouldn't dream of leaving it," I answered, trying not to let on how much her interest bothered me. "And her health? Must be tough, getting older without someone to look after her," Helen pressed on, her eyes narrowing slightly. "She manages well enough. We talk every day," I said firmly, hoping she'd drop the subject. Frank chimed in then, his tone unusually harsh. "Seems risky at her age, being all alone. You sure that's wise?" I glanced at Mark, who looked as uncomfortable as I felt. "We've discussed other options, but she's quite independent. Thanks for your concern, though," he interjected, trying to steer the conversation elsewhere. The rest of the evening passed with a palpable undercurrent of tension. After the meal, while we were having dessert, Helen continued her interrogation under the guise of casual conversation. "Must be hard, balancing a career and worrying about an aging parent," she remarked, looking at me pointedly. "It is, but it's nothing I can't handle," I said, my voice colder than I intended. "We do what we have to do, right?" "Of course, dear," Helen replied, her voice dripping with insincerity. "Just make sure you're not biting off more than you can chew." The moment they left, the relief was tangible. Mark let out a deep breath, running his hands through his hair. "I'm sorry about that. I don't know why they were acting like that," he apologized, looking genuinely upset. "It's okay, Mark. It's not your fault," I assured him, though inside, my mind raced with anxiety. Why was Helen so interested in my mom all of a sudden? What was she getting at? The phone rang early on a Saturday morning, slicing through the quiet like a siren in the night. Groggy and a bit annoyed, I fumbled for the phone on the nightstand, knocking over a glass of water in the process. "Hello?" I mumbled, still half asleep. "Emma, honey, you have to come get me. They've taken everything. I don't know what to do." My mom's voice came through, frantic and shaky. I sat up straight, instantly awake. "Mom, slow down. What happened? Who took what?" "It's the house, Emma. The bank, they've sealed it off. I can't get any of my things. They said I owe them money, so much money. I don't understand." Her voice cracked, and I could hear the fear in every word. My heart pounded. Okay, I'm coming. Just stay where you are." "Where are you?" "I'm in the hospital. They brought me here last night. They thought I was having a stroke, but it was just my blood pressure. It shot right up, Emma. I was so scared. I'm getting the next flight out. Mark will come with me. We'll figure this out, I promise." Hanging up, I turned to find Mark already sitting up, concern etching his face. "What's going on?" he asked. "It's my mom. Something terrible has happened. We need to go to her. Now," I said, throwing the covers off and starting to pack a bag with shaking hands. Mark was on his feet in an instant, pulling clothes from drawers without a word. We were a team, and right then, I'd never been more grateful for his support. The flight was a blur of worry and whispered plans. As soon as we landed, we raced to the hospital where my mom was staying. Seeing her in that hospital bed, pale and frightened, was like a punch to the gut. She looked so small, so vulnerable. "Emma, oh thank God," she sobbed as I rushed to her side. "I'm here, Mom. It's going to be okay," I soothed, holding her hand tightly. She clung to me, then looked over at Mark. "Thank you for coming, both of you. I'm so sorry to drag you into this." "It's no trouble, Sophie. We're here to help," Mark reassured her, his voice steady. Once we had calmed her down, I gently prodded for more details. "Mom, tell us exactly what happened. Start from the beginning." Taking a deep breath, she explained. "A few months ago, someone called. They said they were from my bank and that I had an unpaid loan. For your education, they said. It was so much money, Emma. They told me it was $50,000. I didn't know what to do. My stomach twisted. But, Mom, you didn't take out any loan for my education. It was all scholarships and your hard work." "I know, honey, I know that now. But they were so convincing. They knew where you went to school, when you graduated." I got scared. "They said they could help me take out a loan to cover it, so I did. I didn't want to bother you with it." My fists clenched. What happened then? A week later, I got an email. It said I'd won the lottery, $500,000. I thought it was a miracle. I thought I could pay off the loan and still have enough left over to finally retire comfortably. They said I just needed to pay some taxes on it first, $80,000. So, I took out another loan. "Mom, no," I whispered, horror dawning on me. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I know, I was a fool. There was no lottery, Emma. It was all a scam. Now the bank has taken everything. I owe more than $150,000, including fines and penalties, and I don't have a penny to my name." Anger surged through me, hot and fierce. "We'll get to the bottom of this, Mom. Whoever did this to you, we'll find them." Mark and I were shell-shocked. The phone calls, the emails, and the cascading deceit, it was all too much. But we were clear on our next step: we needed to report this. We drove to the local police station, the morning air feeling unusually crisp as if it too sensed the turmoil. At the station, we sat down with Detective Martinez, a no-nonsense type who'd seen more scams than she could count. We explained everything: how my mom was duped into believing she owed a huge loan, how she thought she'd won the lottery, and every detail leading up to her financial ruin. Martinez listened, her expression growing tighter with each word. "We'll start by tracing the phone numbers and the email address used in the scam. These guys mess up somewhere, they always do," she said, tapping away at her computer. A few intense days later, Martinez called us in. Her office felt colder than I remembered. "We've made a breakthrough," she announced, her voice grim. "The account where your mom sent the money, it's registered to a familiar name." Mark and I exchanged puzzled glances. "Familiar how?" he asked. "It's registered under your mother's name, Helen," Martinez revealed, her eyes locked on Mark. The room spun. It couldn't be. But then I remembered my birthday dinner, how Helen had prodded about my mom's finances, her health, her house. It made a chilling sense. Mark slammed his fist on the table. "That's impossible. My mother couldn't do this." His voice broke, strained with disbelief and anger. "I'm sorry, Mark. I know this is hard, but we've double-checked. She was behind the calls and the emails," Martinez said softly. The betrayal was palpable. Mark was torn, rage and shock battling within him. "We need to confront her. We need to hear it from her," he said finally, his voice steel. As we arrived at his parents' house, I noticed a shiny new car in the driveway and my stomach turned. They were living it up while my mom was drowning in despair and debt. We knocked and Helen opened the door, all smiles, acting like we were just there for a casual visit. "Mark, Emma, what a surprise. Look at our new car. And next week, we're off on a cruise." Mark's face was like stone. "Cut the crap, Mom. We know about the money. It's over." Helen's smile faltered, her eyes darting between us. "What money, dear? What are you talking about?" Mark stepped into the house, his anger barely contained. "The money you stole from Emma's mom. We know everything." At that, Helen's face drained of color. She staggered back, leaning against the wall. "Mark, please, you have to understand, we needed." "It's too late for excuses," Mark cut her off. His father, Frank, had appeared by then, his expression wary. Frank tried to intervene, his voice shaky. "Mark, we're your parents. We're old, prison would destroy us. Please, think about what you're doing." I couldn't hold back. "Your age didn't stop you from scamming an old woman out of her home and her peace. Why should we consider your age now?" Helen started to sob, her hands trembling. "Please, Mark. I'm your mother. Don't do this to us." Mark looked at them, his eyes cold and distant. "The police are on their way. You did this to yourselves." The conversation was cut short by the sound of sirens. As the police car pulled up, Frank and Helen's demeanor shifted from pleading to resignation. They knew it was over. Officers entered the house, and after a brief exchange, handcuffed Helen and Frank. They cried, begged for forgiveness as they were let out, but Mark and I just shook our heads. Forgiveness was too much to ask. The courtroom was packed on the day of the sentencing. As the judge declared a 2-year sentence for both Helen and Frank, a murmur swept through the crowd. People who had once respected and known my in-laws were visibly shocked by the extent of their deception. It was a surreal moment to watch them being led away, knowing they had to sell their house to make restitution. After the trial, life slowly started to piece itself back together, but the scars remained. My mom had recovered physically, but she was still mentally shaken. The phone ringing would make her jump, a sad reminder of the trauma she endured. I took legal custody to ensure her well-being, which gave both of us some peace of mind. With the money Helen and Frank were forced to pay, I managed to find a beautiful nursing home for Mom. It wasn't just any facility, but a prestigious one right in our neighborhood. I made sure she had the best care and could maintain some independence within a supportive community. The first time we visited her new home, Mom was hesitant, but as she saw the gardens and the lively social rooms, her eyes lit up. "It's lovely, Emma," she said, looking around with a cautious smile. "It's the best, Mom. You deserve it. And look, it's just 5 minutes from our place. I'll be here all the time," I reassured her, squeezing her hand. She nodded, her smile growing more confident. "I like that. Maybe I can get used to answering the phone again here, with all these nice people around." I laughed, relieved to see her finding comfort. "You'll be running the place in no time, Mom." As the days turned into weeks, Mark and I found ourselves settling into a new routine. We were expecting our first child, a beacon of hope after a stormy period. The joy of impending parenthood brought us closer, and I often found myself marveling at how Mark stood by me through everything. His unwavering support was my rock. One quiet evening, as we sat in our living room, Mark wrapped an arm around me. "How's your mom today? Settling in still?" "She's good, getting better at making friends. And she started a little garden project," I replied, resting my head against his shoulder. "That's great. She's strong, like her daughter," he said, kissing the top of my head gently. Our lives had changed irrevocably. There was no more contact with Mark's parents, that bridge was burned for good. Yet, in its ashes, we found the strength to rebuild. We focused on the future, our family, and all the love that remained unshaken by the past. Growing up, I always knew where I stood in the family hierarchy. There was Jason, the golden boy, and then there was me, Nancy, the one who existed in the peripherals of our parents' proud gazes. Jason was everything a parent could dream of, his looks could have landed him on magazine covers, and his wit and charm made him the apple of our parents' eyes. "Look at him, Nancy," Dad would often say, his eyes following Jason as he moved with an effortless grace. "Your brother's going to make history. He's got that spark, you know?" I'd nod, forcing a smile, my voice a mere whisper in the shadow of Jason's brilliance. "Yeah, he's amazing." Mom was no less enamored. Dinner conversations always centered around Jason's accomplishments. "Did you hear about Jason's new achievement, Nancy?" she'd start, her voice tinged with excitement. "He's top of his class again. A real genius, our boy." "That's great," I'd respond, my words often drowned out by the next wave of praises for Jason. My own achievements, though decent, never seemed to make waves. They were just gentle ripples that faded quickly against the shore of Jason's triumphs. It wasn't that they didn't love me or care for me. It was just that Jason's light was blinding, casting a long shadow where I stood, quietly observing, quietly learning. I remember one evening, trying to share a piece of my world. "I won the school art contest today," I murmured, hoping for a sliver of their attention. "That's nice, dear," Mom replied, her smile sincere, but fleeting. "Could you help set the table?" The conversation swiftly shifted back to Jason's recent debate victory. I did what I always did, I helped set the table, my mind wandering to places where my achievements weren't just background noise. In those quiet moments, when the house hummed with the tales of Jason's adventures and dreams, I found my own space, my own peace. It wasn't that I didn't have dreams or aspirations. It was just that mine didn't shine as brightly in the family spotlight. "Nancy, you know we're proud of you too, right?" Dad once said, his voice softer, as if he sensed the unspoken feelings that hung like delicate cobwebs in our conversations. "I know, Dad," I replied, my voice steady, my resolve clearer than ever. "I'm proud of me too." And in that moment, I realized it. Being in the shadows wasn't a curse. It was a blessing in disguise. It was where I found my strength, my resolve, and my path. A path not illuminated by the glaring lights of expectation, but one that was lit by the steady glow of self-belief. The day Jason's world came crashing down, it started like any other. Mom was bustling around the kitchen, Dad was buried in the morning paper, and I was just about to leave for work. Then the phone rang, a sharp, shrill sound that seemed to slice through the normalcy of our morning. Mom answered, her usual cheery hello faltering as the words on the other end of the line sunk in. I could see her face drain of color, her hand clutching the phone like a lifeline. What are you saying?" she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "My Jason? That can't be." Dad and I exchanged worried glances, the air thick with tension. He stood up, his chair scraping against the floor, and made his way to Mom. "Honey, what is it? What's happened?" It was like watching a dam break. The words poured out of Mom, each one heavier, more unbelievable than the last. "It's Jason, he's been arrested. They're saying he used his looks, his charm, to scam women out of their money." The room spun, the news hitting us like a physical blow. Jason, our golden boy, the pride of our family, a criminal? It didn't add up, it couldn't. But the weight of the truth was undeniable, pressing down on us, suffocating. Dad slumped back into his chair, his face the picture of defeat. How did we not see? All this time, we thought he was our perfect son, but we were blind. I stood there, frozen, the familiar feeling of being in the background now a twisted comfort. But this time, the background was a stage for a tragedy, a play where our family was coming apart at the seams. Mom was sobbing now, her body racked with guilt and disbelief. We failed him, we spoiled him. Gave him everything, never questioning, never doubting. And now, look what he's done. Her words were like bitter pills, hard to swallow. We had all played our parts in this, in one way or another. Our silence, our blind adoration, they had fueled Jason's fall just as much as his own actions. I moved closer, my own shock giving way to a need to hold my family together. Mom, Dad, this is hard. It's going to be hard. But we need to face it, deal with it. We can't let this break us. Dad looked up, his eyes meeting mine, a silent understanding passing between us. Nancy's right. We need to be strong, now more than ever. We sat there, the three of us, bound by blood and a shared heartache. The golden image of Jason, the one we had all held on to, had shattered. Sitting at the old, creaky kitchen table that had witnessed so many family dramas, the air felt different, almost electric with change. Mom and Dad had called me over, their faces solemn, a stark contrast to the usual casual weekend dinners. Nancy, we need to talk, Dad began, his voice unsteady. He was a man of few words, so the seriousness in his tone immediately set off alarms in my head. Mom reached across the table, her hand trembling slightly as she took mine. Honey, your father and I have been doing a lot of thinking. About the past, about how we treated you and Jason. I felt a knot forming in my stomach. Discussions about Jason usually meant trouble or disappointment. But this felt different. There was a sense of confession in the air, a need for redemption. We realized we weren't fair to you, Nancy, Dad continued, his eyes not meeting mine. We were so caught up in your brother's life, his successes, and, later, his mistakes. We overlooked you, the steady, strong heart of this family. Mom nodded, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. We're so sorry, sweetheart. We can't change the past, but we want to make things right, starting now. We've put aside some money for you, for your education, for your future. It's not just an investment, it's our way of saying we see you, Nancy. We always should have. The words washed over me, a mix of emotions swirling inside. Part of me wanted to brush it off, to maintain the sturdy, independent facade I'd built over the years. But another part, a softer, more vulnerable part, felt seen for the first time in a long while. Mom, Dad, I don't know what to say. I stammered, the walls I'd carefully constructed around my heart starting to crumble. Say you'll accept it, Nancy. Say you'll let us do this one thing right, Mom urged, her voice thick with emotion. So, I accepted, not just the money, but the olive branch they were extending. College was a whirlwind of late-night study sessions and early morning classes, but every challenge, every triumph felt doubly sweet. It was my journey, but it was also our journey, a silent pact between my parents and me to mend the frayed edges of our family tapestry. Graduation day was a scene I'd replay in my mind for years to come. Mom and Dad in the audience, their applause drowning out the rest, their faces alight with pride, not just in my achievements, but in our collective healing. Madam Wilson, my students would greet me each day as I entered the classroom of the prestigious private school where I taught. My heart would swell with pride, not just for the title, but for the journey it represented. Life found a new rhythm, a comforting routine of teaching, grading, and quiet evenings in my rented apartment. The savings account for my own place grew slowly but steadily, a testament to my perseverance and independence. During weekend dinners at Mom and Dad's, the conversation flowed more freely, the laughter more genuine. We were rediscovering each other, learning the contours of our lives beyond the shadow of Jason's tumultuous legacy. You're really making a difference, Nancy, Dad would say, his eyes shining with sincerity. Those kids, they're lucky to have you. And we're lucky to have you, honey, Mom would add, passing me another serving of her famous lasagna. You've brought so much light into our lives, especially when things seemed the darkest. And as for Jason, he was like a distant echo, a memory that had lost its sharpness over time. His name rarely crossed our lips, and when it did, it was met with a somber acknowledgement and a quick shift to brighter topics. Life has a way of throwing punches when you least expect it. That's what happened the day I lost Dad. It was a day like any other until it wasn't. The phone rang, shattering the calm of my morning routine. It was Mom, and the tremble in her voice told me something was terribly wrong before she even spoke. "Nancy, it's your dad," she said, each word soaked in grief. He's had a heart attack. He's gone, Nancy, he's gone." The world stopped. Just like that. Dad, the steady rock of our family, the quiet force that held us together, was gone. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All I could do was listen to Mom's sobs on the other end of the line. "I need you, Nancy. Please, I need you here," she pleaded, her voice a lifeline in the midst of my own swirling despair. "I'm coming, Mom. I'm coming right now," I managed to say, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. The drive to my parents' house was a blur. My mind replayed a million memories, each one a sharp reminder of what we'd lost. Mom was a wreck when I got there, her tears a silent testament to the love she'd shared with Dad for all those years. "We didn't even get to say goodbye, Nancy," she cried, her words breaking on each sob. "He was fine last night, and now he's just gone." I held her, two pieces of a puzzle, trying to hold each other together. There were no words, no comfort to be found in the usual platitudes. So, we just stood there, holding on to each other, the silence speaking volumes. The days that followed were a haze of arrangements and condolences. Relatives and friends came and went, each one trying to offer some solace, some sense of normalcy in the face of our raw grief. "I can't believe he's gone, Nancy," Aunt Linda said, her eyes red from crying. "Your dad was such a good man, a real pillar of the community." I nodded, the lump in my throat making it hard to speak. "He was the best, Aunt Linda. The best." And then there was the matter of Jason. The brother who'd cast such a long shadow over our lives was nowhere to be found. Mom, despite everything, had reached out to him, a mother's love overcoming even the deepest hurt. "He didn't even care, Nancy," she told me, her voice hollow. "He just asked about money, about inheritance. As if your dad's life was just some transaction." The anger that flared within me was fierce and protective. "Forget him, Mom. He made his choices. We're better off without him." The funeral was a quiet affair, just a few close friends and family. The absence of my brother was a silent scream in the midst of our mourning, a final proof of the divide that had grown between us. After everyone else had left, Mom and I stood by Dad's grave, the finality of it all hitting us like a physical force. "He loved you so much, Nancy," Mom said, her hand gripping mine. "We both did. We both do." I squeezed her hand back, the gesture a promise, a vow. "I know, Mom. And I love you. We'll get through this. Together." Life was different after that. The house felt emptier, the conversations quieter. But in that quiet, there was also a sense of unity, of two people coming together, sharing a loss, and somehow finding a way to keep moving forward. Life after Dad's passing was like walking through a fog. Me and Mom, we were trying to pick up the pieces, make sense of a world that had tilted on its axis. That's when the greed we thought we'd left behind came knocking. I started noticing it, subtle at first. Mom would get these phone calls, her face turning all shades of worry as soon as she saw the caller ID. She'd step into the other room, her whisper seeping through the walls, laced with tension and unease. "Mom, what's going on? Who keeps calling?" I finally asked one evening, unable to shake the feeling that something wasn't right. It was like watching a dam break. Mom's facade crumbled, the truth pouring out in a torrent of pent-up fears and guilt. "It's Jason," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's been calling, asking for money. I've been sending it to him, Nancy. I didn't want to worry you." My heart sank, a mix of anger and disbelief churning inside me. "Jason? After all this time, after everything, he has the nerve to ask for money?" Mom nodded, her eyes clouded with regret. I know it's wrong. But he's my son, Nancy. I couldn't just turn him away, not completely." I took a deep breath, trying to steady the storm inside me. "Mom, we can't do this. We can't let him bleed us dry. He didn't even care enough to come to Dad's funeral. His greed, it's got no end." The decision was made. Next time Jason called, we'd put an end to it, once and for all. The phone rang, right on cue, Mom's hand shaking as she answered. "Jason, listen," she started, her voice stronger than I'd heard in a long time. "I can't do this anymore. There's no more money. You need to figure things out on your own." The response was a barrage of insults and threats, Jason's voice a venomous hiss spitting through the phone. But Mom stood her ground, her resolve a newfound armor against his greed. After she hung up, the silence that followed was heavy, loaded with the weight of a severed tie, a final break from the son who'd chosen his path, a path of selfishness and greed. Just when we thought we'd weathered the worst of the storm, life hit us with another cruel blow. Mom, she'd been the glue holding me together after Dad passed, but her heart, it seemed, was more fragile than we knew. I found her that morning, peaceful like she was just sleeping. But I knew, the silence in the house screamed it, she was gone. The pain, the loss, it was like a punch to the gut, knocking the wind right out of me. I called Aunt Linda, my voice a shaky whisper, "Aunt Linda, it's Mom, she's passed away." The line went quiet, the kind of silence that's heavy with unspoken words. "Oh, Nancy," she finally said, her voice thick. "I'm so sorry. Your mom, she was one of the good ones." The days that followed were a blur. There were arrangements to be made, people to call. The same people who'd just offered their condolences for Dad were back, their faces etched with shock and sympathy. I was running on autopilot, doing what needed to be done, but inside, I was screaming. How much loss can one person take? First Dad, then the betrayal of cutting ties with Jason, and now Mom. The funeral was a quiet affair, just close friends and family, the air thick with grief and whispered prayers. And once again, the gaping absence of Jason was like a dark cloud, a stark reminder of the choices he'd made, the family he'd turned his back on. After everyone else had left, I stood there alone, the weight of my new reality pressing down on me. Aunt Linda came over, her hand gentle on my shoulder. "Nancy, you're not alone in this," she said, her voice firm. "You've got family, people who love you. And your parents, they'd be so proud of you, of the woman you've become." Her words, meant to comfort, were a small light in the darkness. But the path ahead was mine to walk alone, a road paved with memories and what-ifs. The house, once filled with the laughter and warmth of a family, now echoed with silence, each room a reminder of what had been, of what was lost. But in that silence, there was also space to breathe, to grieve, and eventually, to heal. The grief was still raw, the loss of Mom like a wound that refused to heal. That's when Jason decided to make his grand return, not with condolences or apologies, but with demands and arrogance. I heard the knock, loud and impatient, echoing through the empty halls of the house that had once been filled with love and laughter. I opened the door, and there he stood, my brother Jason, looking every bit the part of the prodigal son, except there was no remorse in his eyes, just greed and entitlement. "Nancy, long time no see," he said, his voice dripping with a false cheerfulness that didn't reach his eyes. Beside him was his wife, her makeup as bold as her husband's audacity. "Jason," I replied, my voice steady, despite the storm of emotions inside me. "What are you doing here?" He smirked, a look that made my skin crawl. "Well, sis, now that the old folks are gone, I figured it's time to settle the family affairs. Starting with this house." His words hung in the air, heavy with implications. His wife, standing there like a vulture waiting for its share, chimed in. "Yeah, sweetie, why don't you just pack up your things and make it easier for everyone?" I felt a flare of anger, hot and fierce. "This is my parents' house, my home. You have no right to barge in here and make demands." Jason's smirk widened. "Oh, come on, Nancy. We all know Mom and Dad would have wanted me to have this place. I'm the eldest, after all." I shook my head, disbelief and anger mingling in a potent mix. You have some nerve, Jason. You didn't even bother to show up for their funerals, and now you just waltz in here expecting to take everything? His wife snorted, her voice sharp and cutting. Look, let's not make this harder than it has to be. You've had your time here, now it's our turn. We'll be back in 3 days to move in. I suggest you're not here when we do. They turned to leave, their laughter a bitter sound that echoed in the empty halls of my parents' house. I stood there, rooted to the spot, a mixture of grief, rage, and disbelief coursing through me. But as the door closed behind them, a resolve settled in my heart. This was not just a house, it was my heritage, my parents' legacy. I wouldn't let Jason and his greed tarnish their memory, wouldn't let him destroy what they had built with love and sacrifice. I picked up the phone, my fingers dialing the number of Aunt Linda, Mom's lifelong friend and confidant. Aunt Linda, it's Nancy. I need your help. Jason's back, and he's after the house. Her voice, strong and steady, was a comfort in the storm. Don't you worry, Nancy. I'll be right over. We'll sort this out, you and me. We won't let him get away with this. As I hung up the phone, a sense of determination took hold. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready to fight, not just for the house, but for the dignity and memory of my parents. The air was tense as Aunt Linda and I sat in the living room, waiting. We knew they were coming, the 3-day ultimatum Jason had given was up. When the sound of a car pulling into the driveway reached our ears, we exchanged a glance, a silent agreement that we were in this together, come what may. The knock on the door was forceful, demanding. I took a deep breath, steadied my nerves, and opened it. There stood Jason and his wife, their expressions a mix of arrogance and impatience. Time's up, Nancy, Jason said, his voice cold. Pack your things and get out. This house is ours now. His wife sneered, adding, Yeah, you heard him. Move it, or we'll make you. Aunt Linda stood up, her presence commanding, despite her age. Jason, you ungrateful man, she said, her voice sharp as a knife. You think you can just waltz in here and take everything? You think that's what your mother would have wanted? Jason's face twisted into a sneer. And what would you know about it, huh? You're just her nosy sister. Aunt Linda's laugh was bitter, filled with years of watching a family torn apart by greed. I know more than you think. Your mother made me the executor of her will. She knew exactly what kind of man you'd become. She waved an envelope in front of Jason's face. He snatched it from her hands, tearing it open with a viciousness that made my blood run cold. Aunt Linda's laughter filled the room again, her eyes twinkling with a mix of triumph and sadness. Oh, Jason, you really thought you could bully your way into a fortune? That was just a copy. The original is safe with me, and another copy with the notary. Your mother's wishes are clear and legally binding. She took another copy of the will from her pocket, reading aloud the words that sealed Jason's fate. The house, 200 grand, it was all mine, a final gift from a mother. Jason's anger erupted like a volcano, his words a stream of venom and desperation. This is a joke, right? He stammered. Everything to Nancy? And all I get is a Bible? You can't do this to me. That's my money, my house. You have to share it. But I stood firm, my resolve hardened by years of being overlooked and underestimated. This is Mom's will, Jason. Her final decision. And I'm honoring it, whether you like it or not. His wife pulled at his arm, her eyes darting nervously. Let's just go, Jason. This isn't worth it. But Jason was beyond reason, beyond understanding. It took the threat of calling the police to finally make them leave, their retreat a mix of anger and disbelief. As they drove away, Aunt Linda turned to me, a gentle smile on her face. Your parents would be proud, Nancy. You stood your ground. I looked around the house, my house now, feeling the weight of my parents' legacy, of the responsibility that came with it. I knew then what I wanted: a family of my own, children to love and guide, to raise with the same strength and integrity that had gotten me through the toughest of times. Life had come full circle, and as I stood there, in the home that had seen so much joy and pain, I was ready for the future, ready to build a legacy of my own, one filled with love, fairness, and the quiet strength that had been my companion through it all. Alright, let's dive a bit deeper into how it all started. The day I met Tom wasn't anything special, at least it didn't start that way. Just me, trying to break free from the grind with a bike ride. Then, bang, my chain decides to call it quits right in the middle of nowhere. Picture this, me, stranded, with my bike flipped upside down, hands covered in grease, and not a clue on how to fix it. That's when Tom showed up. "Looks like you could use a hand," he said, rolling up on his bike, a grin plastered on his face. He had that look of someone who's seen his fair share of bike troubles. I sighed. Yeah, this isn't exactly my forte. I was hoping to enjoy a peaceful ride, not a mechanic's lesson. Tom chuckled as he dismounted. Well, life's got a funny way of throwing lessons at us. Let's see what we got here. He knelt beside the bike, his hands moving confidently over the parts. I couldn't help but notice how at ease he seemed, like this was just another day in the park for him. "Chains come off, and you've got a bit of a mess here," Tom observed, glancing up at me. "You ride often?" "Trying to," I replied, folding my arms. "But it seems like my bike's got other plans." "Here, hold this," he said, handing me a tool I couldn't name if my life depended on it. We worked together, or more accurately, he worked while I handed him tools, following his instructions. "You're not from around here, are you?" he asked casually, as if we were discussing the weather. "How'd you guess?" I said, trying to sound lighthearted. I was new in town, having moved for the job. Didn't know many people, especially not helpful, bike repairing strangers. "Just a hunch. I've got a good eye for new faces." "Name's Tom." He introduced himself properly, finally getting the chain back on track. "Naomi," I replied, offering a grimy hand, which he shook without hesitation. "There, all done. She should ride smoothly now. Just try to avoid any more adventures today," Tom said, standing up and wiping his hands on his jeans. I couldn't help but laugh. "I'll try, but no promises." "Thanks a lot, Tom." I was pretty much stranded. "Anytime, Naomi. If you ever need a riding partner or another lesson in bike mechanics, you know who to call," he said with a wink. His casual confidence was disarming. Not in a bad way, though. It felt like talking to an old friend, someone who just gets it. We parted ways, but not before exchanging numbers. There was something about Tom, a straightforwardness I appreciated. No airs, no pretending. Just him, his bike, and a willingness to help out a stranger. Little did I know, this chance meeting would turn into so much more. It was the beginning of everything, the good, the bad, and the utterly unexpected. After that unexpected yet serendipitous bike repair session, Tom and I started hanging out more. It wasn't long before we were inseparable, cycling around, exploring every nook and cranny of our little town. It felt like we were in our little world, pedaling towards something beautiful, something ours. Our dreams started weaving together, stitching a future we both yearned for. One lazy Sunday afternoon, sprawled on the couch after a particularly grueling ride, Tom broke the silence. "You know, Naomi, I've been thinking." I turned to look at him, raising an eyebrow. "Thinking? That sounds dangerous." He chuckled, that easy, infectious laugh of his filling the room. "Yeah, well, hear me out. We've been doing this." He gestured vaguely around. "This whole thing. It's great, but I've been thinking about what's next." I sat up, intrigued. "What's next? Like, more biking trails? Or trying out those tandem bikes?" I joked, but I could tell he was onto something bigger. "No, not exactly. I mean, yes to more trails, but I was thinking more along the lines of, us. Our future. Maybe it's time we started thinking about settling down? You know, find a place that's ours, build a life together." His words hit me like a gentle wave, unexpected yet refreshing. "Settling down, huh?" I mused, letting the idea swirl around in my mind. I like the sound of that. But, we've got to think big, Tom. If we're doing this, I want us to dream big. A house, yes, but not just any house. Somewhere we can really call home, where we can maybe start a family? Tom's eyes lit up, his hand finding mine, squeezing it gently. Exactly. I was hoping you'd say that. I've been looking at places, nothing concrete, just daydreaming, I guess. There's this one spot, it's a bit out of the way, but the view, Naomi, it's like something out of a dream. We could have our morning coffee overlooking the valley, go on bike rides without seeing a soul. The excitement in his voice was contagious. I leaned in, imagining our future mornings, the mist over the valley, the sound of our laughter echoing as we chased each other on our bikes. Tom, that sounds perfect. But, it's gonna be a lot of work. We're gonna have to hustle like never before. Yeah, I know. But we've got this, Naomi. We make a pretty damn good team, if I say so myself. And hey, no one said our dreams would be handed to us. We'll work for it, every step of the way. The determination in his voice was all the confirmation I needed. We were in this together, ready to face whatever came our way. But, Tom, we've got to make sure we're on the same page here. No sugarcoating, no holding back. If we're doing this, it's gonna take everything we've got. Savings, late nights, maybe even cutting back on some of our adventures. Tom nodded, his expression serious. I get it, and you're right. It's not gonna be easy. But imagine, just imagine, Naomi, coming home to our place, our kids running around in the yard. It'll be worth it. I smiled, leaning my head on his shoulder. Yeah, it will be. And hey, when things get tough, we'll just remind each other of that view, of the mornings we're working towards. Deal? Deal, he agreed, wrapping an arm around me. We sat there in silence, not the uncomfortable kind, but the kind that spoke volumes. We were dreaming together, our hopes and fears laid bare, united by a common goal. The only thing that bothered me about living with Tom was his sister. Stepping into Lily's world is like walking into a never-ending party, where responsibility is the guest that never got invited. The first time I met her, she was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through her phone like it held the secrets of the universe. I'd just moved some of my stuff into the small house that Tom and I were calling home, and there she was, making herself very at home. Hey, you must be Naomi, the new sis-in-law, Lily said, without looking up from her phone. Her tone was casual, almost too casual, for someone who was meeting her brother's wife, for the first time. Yeah, that's me, I replied, trying to keep the peace. Nice to meet you, Lily. Was all she said, finally gracing me with a glance. It was clear from the get-go that Lily lived in a bubble, one where work was a mythical concept and money was just something you asked for. One evening, not long after that first meeting, I found myself sitting at the dinner table with Tom's family. It was a regular occurrence, these family dinners, but they always had a way of turning into a stage for the latest Lily drama. So, Lily, have you thought about what Dad offered? Tom asked, trying to sound as non-confrontational as possible. He was referring to the job offer at his dad's company, an assistant manager position that would have been a golden opportunity for anyone looking to get their foot in the door. Lily scoffed, a forkful of salad halfway to her mouth. Work for peanuts? No thanks. I'm waiting for something better. Her dad, a man of patience, but wearing thin, chimed in. Lily, you can't just wait around forever. It's time you start taking some responsibility. Oh, please, not this lecture again. Lily rolled her eyes, dropping her fork with a clatter. I don't see why I should settle for some dead-end job. The table went silent. Tom's mom, always the peacemaker, tried to change the subject, but the tension lingered like a bad taste. It wasn't just the job situation, though. Lily's financial escapades were legendary. One time, she racked up a bill so high at some fancy club, her mom had to sell a pair of jeweled earrings just to cover it. I can't believe you let it get that bad, Tom said to Lily one afternoon when the bill came to light. We were all in the living room, the air thick with disappointment and disbelief. Lily just shrugged. I didn't ask her to sell her earrings. She offered. That's not the point, Lily. Tom raised his voice, a rare occurrence. You're taking advantage of Mom's kindness. And you're not? Lily shot back, her voice rising. You and Naomi living in that house, rent-free. Granddad left it to you, but it's still taking advantage. I could feel my cheeks heating up. This was different, and she knew it. We were saving up, working towards something more. Lily, on the other hand, was just burning through life with no thought for tomorrow. Living in that house isn't the same as blowing money on parties and expecting Mom to bail you out, I finally said, unable to keep quiet. Lily looked at me, her eyes narrowing. Oh, so now you're part of this? Last I checked, you're not a part of this family by blood. There was silence after these words, and I realized that I was blushing even more. Lately, our little home started feeling less like a sanctuary and more like a public park. Ever since Lily discovered where the spare key was hidden, or more accurately, bullied Tom into telling her, our place became her go-to spot. Not for a chat and a cup of tea, mind you, but as her personal lounge, pantry, and, increasingly, her wardrobe. One particularly stressful Thursday, I came home from work, dead on my feet, dreaming of a hot shower and an evening curled up with Tom on the couch. Instead, I walked into what looked like the aftermath of a hurricane. Lily sprawled on the couch, TV blaring, surrounded by a mess of snack wrappers and several of my personal belongings scattered around her like she owned the place. I dropped my bag, the sound drowned out by the TV. My patience, already hanging by a thread, snapped. Lily, what the hell is this? She barely glanced at me, eyes glued to the screen. Chill, Naomi. Just killing some time. Your place is better than ours, you know that. I took a deep breath, counting to 10 in my head before I could trust myself to speak. It's not a public park, Lily. You can't just barge in and make a mess. Lily snorted, finally looking up at me. What's your problem? It's not like I'm bothering anyone. Tom doesn't mind. That did it. Tom doesn't mind because he hates confrontations, but I do. This is our home, not your personal hangout spot. And why are you wearing my sweater? She looked down at herself as if noticing, for the first time. This? I just found it lying around. Thought it was Tom's or something. Right, because Tom really strikes me as the pastel sweater type. I shot back, the sarcasm heavy in my voice. Before I could launch into a tirade about respect and boundaries, the front door opened, and Tom walked in, looking as tired as I felt. His face lit up when he saw me, then fell just as quickly when he took in the scene before him. Hey, babe. What's going on? He hesitated, eyes darting between me and his sister. Ask your sister why she thinks it's okay to treat our house like her personal dumpster, I said, frustration bleeding into my words. Tom sighed, running a hand through his hair. Lily, what have we talked about? Oh, come on, Tom. I'm just relaxing. Naomi's making a big deal out of nothing. Lily protested, finally turning the TV off and standing up, making no move to clean her mess. Tom looked at me, then at his sister, a silent battle of wills playing out. Lily, you gotta respect our space. And Naomi's stuff. It's not cool to just take things without asking. Lily rolled her eyes, muttering something under her breath before grabbing her bag. Fine, I'm out. Didn't realize this place was a freaking museum. As she stormed out, Tom and I were left standing in the silence of her wake, the tension thick. He moved to hug me, but I stepped back, my emotions a tangled mess. Tom, we need to talk. This can't keep happening. It's not just about your sister using our place like a hotel. It's about respect, and right now, I'm feeling a total lack of it. Tom's face fell, and he nodded, understanding the seriousness of the situation. You're right. I'll talk to her, Naomi. I promise. We'll set some boundaries. I don't want you feeling like this in our own home. The rest of the evening was spent in quiet contemplation, both of us knowing that a conversation with Lily was just a temporary fix. The real challenge was ensuring she understood the meaning of boundaries and respect. That fateful day I caught Lily red-handed, rifling through my personal belongings, marked a turning point. There she was, in my bedroom, drawers open, my stuff scattered all around her. My jaw dropped. "What in the world do you think you're doing?" I demanded, my voice echoing off the walls. Lily, nonchalant, barely glanced up. "Just borrowing a few things. No big deal," she shrugged, as if she was doing nothing out of the ordinary. "No big deal? Lily, that's my stuff. You can't just take whatever you want without asking," I shot back, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. She smirked, looking up with a defiance that took me aback. "Come on, don't be so tight. It's not like you don't have plenty to spare," she retorted, her tone dripping with entitlement. I couldn't believe her audacity. "It's not about having plenty, Lily. It's about respect, something you clearly know nothing about," I replied, my voice rising. She rolled her eyes, stuffing a scarf of mine into her bag, and shot back. "You're making a mountain out of a molehill. Chill out." The confrontation escalated quickly, and before I knew it, Lily had stormed out, muttering insults under her breath. The aftermath left me shaken, but little did I know, it was just the beginning. The next day, Lily's mom showed up at our door, furious. Without so much as a greeting, she launched into a tirade. "How dare you accuse my daughter of stealing? You should be ashamed, hoarding all these things while she has so little." I was taken aback. "It's not about the things. It's about the principle. She can't just barge in and take what she wants," I tried to explain, but it fell on deaf ears. "She's family, and family shares." "You're just being greedy," she accused, her words stinging like salt in a wound. The situation worsened from there. My belongings continued to disappear, only to show up on social media, proudly displayed by Lily as if she'd acquired them through honest means. My frustration grew each day, culminating in the night she decided to bring her drunken party to our doorstep. The noise was unbearable, a cacophony of laughter and shouting that pierced the quiet of our home. Tom, usually the calm one, reached his breaking point. He stormed into the living room, confronting Lily and her rowdy friends. "This is our home, not a bar. You need to leave. Now," he bellowed, the anger in his voice unmistakable. Lily, unfazed and clearly inebriated, laughed in his face. "Oh, come on. We're just having a little fun. Don't be such a killjoy," she slurred, her friends echoing her laughter. Tom's face was a mask of fury. "I'm not joking, Lily. Get out, or I'm calling the police," he threatened, his stance firm and unwavering. The laughter died down as the reality of the situation set in. With grumbles and complaints, Lily and her entourage finally vacated our home, leaving a trail of chaos in their wake. The lull lasted a couple of months, and then things took a nosedive into the bizarre. Dad, who's been a cop for as long as I can remember, decided to crash with us for a bit. That day, Lily, the family's personal whirlwind of chaos, showed up unannounced, claiming some urgent need to just grab a few things from upstairs. She darted through the house with a purpose, then vanished as quickly as she had appeared. Fast forward to the evening, and Dad's casual scrolling through his phone turned frantic. Alert after alert popped up, his bank account was hemorrhaging money at an alarming rate. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks, his bank card was nowhere to be found. He was on the phone with the bank faster than you can say fraud, demanding they block his card immediately. No sooner had he hung up than my phone rang. It was Lily, sounding more sloshed than ever. "Hey, why'd you block the card? You're screwing up my night. How am I supposed to pay for my drinks?" I was floored. "Lily, are you out of your mind? You stole my dad's card, not mine. He's a cop, for crying out loud." Her response was a mix of disbelief and mockery, slurred but clear. "Oh, come on. Stop playing games. You're just trying to get me in trouble." By this time, Dad and Tom were both hovering over me, their faces a mix of anger and incredulity. Dad, always the calm one in a crisis, took the phone from me with a demeanor that could freeze fire. "Lily, this is John. You've got exactly one chance to make this right. Return the card and the money, or I promise you, you'll be facing more than just a hangover tomorrow." Her laughter echoed down the phone line, a clear sign she wasn't taking any of this seriously. "You guys are hilarious, really. Good night." With that, she hung up. Dad's face was set in stone as he dialed his colleagues at the station, briefing them on the situation with a precision and calmness that belied the storm brewing inside him. Tom paced the room. I sat, dumbfounded by the audacity of Lily's actions and the sheer gall she had to laugh it off. After the debacle with the stolen card, things escalated quickly. We found ourselves at the police station, a place I never imagined we'd be under such circumstances. My dad, still in his work mode, was all business, but I could see the disappointment etched deep in his face. Tom was beside me, a mix of anger and disbelief in his eyes. And there, looking like a deer caught in headlights, was Lily, cuffed and sobbing. "Please, I didn't mean for any of this to happen," Lily whimpered, her tough facade crumbled into a heap of regret. I just wanted some fun." Dad, usually the calm one, had his patience worn thin. "Fun? Is that what you call stealing? Putting your entire family through this mess?" Lily's mom, my mother-in-law, was next to her, tears streaming down her face, but with a fire in her eyes. "This is all just a big misunderstanding. My Lily wouldn't hurt a fly. You have to believe us." I was fuming, struggling to keep my composure. Misunderstanding? She stole from us, from her own family. How do you just brush that off? The room was charged with tension, each of us standing on a precipice of raw emotions. My father-in-law, a stern man who'd been silent up until now, finally spoke. "Enough," he said, his voice commanding the room's attention. "This ends now. Lily, you'll return what you took, and we'll sort out the mess you've made." My mother-in-law exploded. "You can't be serious. They're treating her like a criminal over some family misunderstanding." "That's because she is one," Tom finally said, his tone colder than I'd ever heard. "She broke the law. Being family doesn't give her a free pass to do whatever she pleases." The discussion went back and forth, with my father-in-law eventually stating that if Lily and her mother couldn't abide by the rules of decency and law, they'd have to find somewhere else to live. It was a bombshell that left everyone reeling. My mother-in-law was hysterical, Lily was a mix of tears and defiance, and there I stood, watching as the family I married into seemed to fracture before my eyes. After everything that went down, my father-in-law did right by us. He paid back every penny that Lily had blown through using Dad's card. Dad didn't push for charges against her. But that didn't mean things went back to how they were. Lily and her mom packed up and left, started a new chapter, you could say, in some cramped apartment living off what little the pension coughed up. Lily? She hasn't changed much, still jobless, still flaunting her so-called life on social media like it's something to be proud of. Tom and we had a sit-down about all this mess, once the dust settled. "Can you believe this? After all the drama, she's still at it," I said, scrolling through Lily's latest adventures online, a mix of disbelief and irritation churning in my gut. Tom, ever the rock, just shook his head. "Let her be, babe. We did what we could. It's on her now. Besides," Tom added, "we've got bigger and better things to plan. Like that big house you keep dreaming about." The determination in his voice was contagious. "Absolutely. We focus on us, our dreams, the big house, maybe even start talking about kids." "Kids, huh?" Tom's eyes lit up at the mention. "I think we're gonna make great parents. But let's promise to never let our kids turn into mini Lilies." We laughed together, the sound a healing balm to the wounds of the past weeks. "Deal. No mini tyrants allowed." I agreed. The next few days were a testament to our resolve. We cleaned, we planned, we dreamed. Our conversations were peppered with ideas for the future, interspersed with moments of reflection on what we'd gone through. "I was thinking," I said one evening as we sat with cups of tea, "maybe we should start a new tradition. Something that's just ours, to mark the end of one chapter and the beginning of another." Tom nodded, thoughtful. "I like that. What did you have in mind?" "Maybe a bike ride every month. Just the two of us, exploring new places, making new memories." He grinned, squeezing my hand. "I love it. It's how we started, after all. It's perfect." As for Lily and her mom, life had taken them on a different path. They faced their own challenges, grappling with the consequences of their actions. From afar, I hoped they'd find their way, learn from their mistakes, and maybe, just maybe, find their own new beginning.